Chapter 1261. At that moment, 5 types of sword will domains filled the sky. The scene was extremely shocking. Universal reversal of noble spirit. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes darkened slightly when he saw the 4 star lords conjuring 4 types of sword will domains at the same time. Anyone would have felt a lot of pressure when faced with 4 types of sword will domains. Kill! Jiang Qingsong and the others no longer held back. They burst with the power of their sword will domains and pressed down on Jun Xiaoyao. Jiang Qingsong conjured his iron blood sword will. The sword will domain was like an ancient battlefield, with the sound of clashing spears and armored horses. A fierce aura burst and pressed down on Jun Xiaoyao. Jiang Shiyu conjured his cursed sword will domain. Black cursed demonic seals were branded in the void, looking for a loophole in Jun Xiaoyao's defense. Jiang Wangcheng also burst with his shadow sword will domain. His entire body seemed to have melded into the darkness, turning into a shadow. He charged at Jun Xiaoyao with his sword at lightning speed. Jiang Yuanlong conjured his decaying sword will. Dark green sword aura burst. Everywhere it passed, even the void seemed to have sizzled with the sound of burning and corroding. One could only imagine how powerful the 4 of them were when they attacked at the same time. Even Jun Xiaoyao was under a lot of pressure. His realm of noble spirit first clashed with Jiang Qingsong's iron blood domain, causing a shocking rumble. However, Jiang Shiyu's cursed demonic seal was imprinted on Jun Xiaoyao's body. The cursed demonic seal would not cause any obvious injuries to Jun Xiaoyao, but it would secretly weaken his strength. This is bad. Jun Xiaoyao frowned. He immediately felt that the spiritual qi of his divine residence was suppressed by 30% due to the cursed demonic seal. Of course, the cursed demonic seal was not unbreakable. With Jun Xiaoyao's strength, it would have taken him a while to deal with it. However, the problem was that the 4 star lords would not give Jun Xiaoyao a chance to deal with the cursed demonic seal. Just as Jun Xiaoyao was about to deal with the cursed demonic seal, a shadow suddenly attacked from the dark. It was Jiang Wangcheng, the 3rd brother, who had conjured his shadow sword will. Jun Xiaoyao held the heavenly mandate sword and swung it back, clashing with Jiang Wangcheng's sword. At that moment, Jiang Yuanlong made his move again. A sword imbued with decaying swordsmanship was thrust at Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao parried the attack with his sword again. A bit of sword aura swept through Jun Xiaoyao's sleeve. That piece of sleeve was immediately corroded into a black mark. Young Master Xiaoyao is in a bad situation. Watching the battle before them, the surrounding sky prides all had the same thought. The suppression of the 4 supreme sword Dao domains was too strong. If it were any other genius, they might have been killed instantly. Jun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, continued to hold on even though he had declined slightly under the suppression of the 4 star lords. Heh! You really think highly of this Jun. Under the attacks of the 4 star lords, Jun Xiaoyao continued to smile. To think that you're still able to maintain such a state of mind even when you're about to die. Jun Xiaoyao, I really do admire you, Jiang Qingsong said with a cold smirk. Imminent death? Ha ha ha. Jun Xiaoyao chuckled. What are you laughing at? Jiang Qingsong's gaze was dark. I'm laughing at how naive you guys are, of course, Jun Xiaoyao said with a faint smile. What? Could it be that young Master Xiaoyao hasn't used his full strength? After hearing Jun Xiaoyao's words, the surrounding sky prides were in an uproar. The battle had already reached such a critical juncture, yet Jun Xiaoyao still had not revealed all of his trump cards. Poetry and sword Dao, snow moving in the cold air. Jun Xiaoyao held the heavenly mandate sword in his hand and augmented it with the power of the Haoran sword Dao. Countless ancient characters floated. When he swung his sword, it was as if the sky was filled with wind and snow. There was a sharp sword will in the poetic style. When the sword fell, it clashed with Jiang Wangcheng, who had been augmented with the shadow sword Dao. Pfft! Jiang Wangcheng's figure was knocked out of the phantom state, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. What? Seeing this scene, Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Yuanlong could not help but be shocked. Jiang Qingsong could not help but say, "This is not the sword art of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion." Jun Xiaoyao's figure was like a deity, and the corner of his mouth curled into a faint smile. "Of course, this is not the sword art of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion. This is a unique skill that I created myself." As soon as he finished speaking, Jun Xiaoyao performed the sword move that he created himself again. Dual mastery of poetry and sword, azure tide of the river and sky. Jun Xiaoyao swung his sword, and the azure sword aura swept out like waves. There was a beautiful artistic conception in the poetic style, but it also contained an extremely sharp sword aura. What a beautiful move! Some of the female geniuses who were watching the battle almost fell for the move. Jun Xiaoyao was like an ancient deity, drinking poetry and challenging the world with his sword. Cough, cough. Jiang Yuanlong was injured by Jun Xiaoyao's sword again, and he coughed up blood. Then, Jun Xiaoyao performed the emperor-level movement technique of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion, the Wanderer. His figure was like a rock, surging through the waves, and he flashed to Jiang Shiyu's side in an instant. Dual mastery of poetry and sword, cold day and snow at night. The sword aura swept out, and Jiang Shiyu was sent flying while coughing up blood. The situation was almost immediately turned around by Jun Xiaoyao. Is that the sword art that young master Xiaoyao created himself? It is indeed powerful. As expected of one of the top 10 young masters. It seems that it won't be easy for the 4-star lords to kill Jun Xiaoyao. Discussions were heard all around. Even Crown Prince Xingyang's expression changed slightly. If the 4-star lords failed, he wouldn't end up well either. Outside the sacred emperor world, Elder Qing Song and the others of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion were also relieved, and they smiled. Jun Xiaoyao lived up to his name as the first seat of the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion. He didn't disappoint them. On the other hand, the 7th star lord of the Starry Sword Pavilion frowned slightly, but he also looked very calm. The battle isn't over yet. It's too early to make a conclusion, the 7th star lord said coldly. Ha, it's the 4-star lords of the Starry Sword Pavilion who overestimated themselves. Elder Qing Song was very relaxed. In the sacred emperor world, Jiang Qingsong's expression froze slightly when he saw his 3 brothers being injured one after another. However, what made Jun Xiaoyao frown slightly was that Jiang Qingsong was still very calm, as if he had a card up his sleeve. Jiang Qingsong, what is your trump card? Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. Jiang Qingsong said calmly, self-created sword art. Jun Xiaoyao, you are indeed surprising. However, this still won't change the fact that you will die today. Begin the formation. Jiang Qingsong shouted coldly, and a formation seal appeared from his origin ring. At the same time, Jiang Shiyu, Jiang Wangcheng, and Jiang Yuanlong each took out a formation seal. The 4 formation seals appeared together, and the wind and clouds immediately surged. The sky seemed to have turned into a curtain of night. The stars shone brightly, and the Milky Way flowed. The 4 formation seals each drew 7 stars, condensing them into 4-star beasts. They were the 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon, the 7 mansions of the White Tiger, the 7 mansions of the Vermilion Bird, and the 7 mansions of the Xuanwu. 4-star constellation heaven-slaying formation, rise. Jiang Qingsong shouted, and the 4-star mansions imprinted themselves in the air, turning into star beasts that roared in the sky. The 4-star lords each controlled a star beast. For a moment, the world seemed to tremble from the terrifying formation. This was the true trump card of the 4-star lords. It was a mid-grade Earth-level formation that could threaten the Heavenly Palace's saints, the 4-star constellation heaven-slaying formation. Chapter 1262. At this moment, night had shrouded the entire sky. Above the dark dome, the 4-star beasts roared into the sky. The 4-star lords each rode a star beast. Jiang Qingsong rode the Azure Dragon star beast. Jiang Shiyu rode the White Tiger star beast. Jiang Wangcheng rode the Suzaku star beast. Jiang Yuanlong rode the black tortoise star beast. The aura of the four reached its peak at this moment. That's the four gods constellation heaven punishment formation of the starry sword pavilion. Isn't it rumored that only the celestial palace's sovereigns can perform such a formation? Looking at the four star beasts in the sky, everyone was in an uproar. A mid-grade Earth-level formation was a formation that could threaten the celestial palace's sovereigns. Using it to deal with those in the divine dwelling stage was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. What was even more puzzling was how the four star lords could perform such a formation. Not only were the people around shocked, but even outside the Holy Emperor realm, there was a storm. The Luofu Sword Pavilion was in an uproar. Elder Qing Song's eyes widened, and then there was unconcealable anger in his eyes. He looked at the seventh star lord of the Starry Sword Pavilion and said, "Is this your trump card?" Ha! The four star lords have been practicing hard in order to prepare this big gift. Fortunately, the four of them have the same mind, which is why they have the ability to successfully cultivate the four gods constellation heaven punishment formation. Although they can't really exert the power of this formation, they can still kill the divine dwelling stage geniuses. The seventh star lord laughed loudly. Jun Xiaoyao was the chief disciple of the Luofu Sword Pavilion and one of the top 10 young masters. If he died in the Holy Emperor realm, it would be a huge blow to the Luofu Sword Pavilion. Damn it, even with Elder Qing Song's saintly temperament, he couldn't help but be angry at this moment. He looked at the light screen in the sky and murmured in his heart, "Xiaoyao, you must hold on." Outside the Holy Emperor realm, everyone in the Luofu Sword Pavilion was extremely nervous. They were very confident in Jun Xiaoyao's strength. But this time, he was facing a formation that could threaten the Celestial Palace's sovereigns. Even Huang Qianqiu had to be very vigilant in the face of this formation, let alone Jun Xiaoyao. At this moment, the battlefield in the Holy Emperor realm. Jun Xiaoyao was completely trapped in the formation. Four star beasts surrounded him in four different directions. Jun Xiaoyao wouldn't have been able to escape even if he wanted to. "So, this is what you guys are counting on, huh?" Jun Xiaoyao's expression turned serious. Despite being caught in a perilous situation, Jun Xiaoyao remained calm and composed, behaving like an immortal. "Ha, Jun Xiaoyao, are you still pretending to be indifferent?" This four gods constellation heaven-slaying formation is something that the four of us have worked hard on for a long time before we succeeded. Do you like this gift of mine? Jiang Qingsang smirked. None of you are capable of unleashing the full power of this formation, Jun Xiaoyao pointed out right away. At its peak, the four gods constellation heaven punishing formation could even kill supremacies. Although the ripples of the formation from the four star lords were still extremely powerful, it was nowhere close to the level where it could kill venerables. No matter what, it's enough to kill you. Jiang Shiyu's tone was cold. That's right. This time, even if the Heavenly Emperor comes, he won't be able to save your life. Jiang Yuanlong smiled coldly. Don't talk nonsense. Just attack. Don't give him any chance of survival. Jiang Qingsang said. Yes, sir. The other three responded in unison. 7 mansions of the Tsang Dragon, reversal of heaven and earth. Jiang Qingsang was the first to attack. He swung his sword, and the Tsang Dragon star beast that he was controlling soared into the air along with the sword. Its might was unparalleled. Even Jun Xiaoyao had a serious look in his eyes. He was even more cautious than before. Poetry and sword mastery, a night of spring breeze's shadow. Heavenly Mandate swung his sword, and the sword aura stirred up waves, clashing with Jiang Qingsang's sword move. Immediately, a raging wave burst, and the air waves were everywhere. The Tsang Dragon star beast let out a deafening roar and swung its tail, attacking Jun Xiaoyao again. Jun Xiaoyao blocked it with his sword. A powerful force burst out, and Jun Xiaoyao was sent flying for hundreds of feet. The web between his thumb and index finger was torn, and blood was spilling. Jun Xiaoyao, who had been maintaining his composure all this while, began to be suppressed for real. Jiang Shiyu, Jiang Wangcheng, and Jiang Yuanlong made their moves as well. Each of them rode their star beasts, and with surging spiritual qi and divine might, they attacked Jun Xiaoyao in a pincer attack. Jiang Qingsang alone, with the power of the star beasts, was enough to injure Jun Xiaoyao. At the moment, with all four of them attacking together, the pressure was unimaginable. Boom! 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 The sky shook violently. The four star beasts roared in the sky, bursting with shocking divine might. Jun Xiaoyao's sword vibrated, and he looked like an ancient sword deity with a determined expression. Even though his white robe was stained with blood, he showed no fear. Haoran Way of the Sword, Haoran Heaven and Earthquake. Jun Xiaoyao activated the power of the sword again, trying to create an opening. However, Jiang Qingsang and the others would not give Jun Xiaoyao such a chance. The four of them attacked at the same time, suppressing Jun Xiaoyao again. Cough, Jun Xiaoyao was finally injured. He coughed up blood at the corner of his mouth, and his black hair was messy. How shameless! Many geniuses, especially the female ones, who were watching the battle, felt that it was unfair to Jun Xiaoyao. It was one thing to bully him with numbers, but now, they even used such a killing formation. It was no different from cheating. I really hope someone can save young Master Xiaoyao, some geniuses prayed in their hearts. However, they also knew that such thoughts were laughable. Who would dare to intervene in such a situation? Even the sky prides of the other overlord forces would not dare to interfere. That was because the four star lords were determined to kill Jun Xiaoyao. You can die now, Jun Xiaoyao. Jiang Qingsang attacked again when he saw that. The four of them activated the four star beasts at the same time, suppressing Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao raised his strength to the limit when he saw that. A fierce storm of sword aura burst out, accompanied by Haoran Sword Will. Haoran Way of the Sword, Gentleman's Wind. Jun Xiaoyao activated his ultimate move, and his sword turned into a storm that swept across the world. Countless sword aura circled around with the ancient characters, tearing the ground apart. Boom! Jun Xiaoyao's ultimate move clashed with the formation of the four star lords. The geniuses who were watching the battle hurriedly retreated, fearing that they would be affected. In such an extreme collision, Jun Xiaoyao coughed up blood at the corner of his mouth. His sleeves were torn, and he fell from the sky, half kneeling on the ground. Both of his arms were bleeding. Jiang Qingsang and the other three also had blood at the corner of their mouths. Jun Xiaoyao's ultimate move still caused considerable damage to the four of them. However, the final result was still the same. It's over. Jiang Qingsang wiped the blood at the corner of his mouth and swung his sword. The Tsang Dragon Star Beast roared and slashed at Jun Xiaoyao with the sword. Jun Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. The back of his hand glowed faintly, as if an emblem was about to appear. You're the ones who forced my hand. Jun Xiaoyao's face was cold. He wanted to use his true trump card. However, right at this moment, a bolt of lightning shot over from the distant sky with a loud rumble. It was like a thunder dragon that shocked the world. It collided with Jiang Qingsang's sword move, causing huge waves. Who is it? Jiang Qingsang and the others were surprised and furious. The geniuses around were also in an uproar. At such a juncture, who would dare to interfere and save Jun Xiaoyao? Chapter 1263. The ferocious sword aura exploded along with the lightning, clashing with Jiang Qingsang's sword attack. Everyone was dumbfounded, their eyes filled with shock. The four star lords surrounded Jun Xiaoyao at the moment. From another perspective, it could be seen as a clash between the Starry Sword Pavilion and the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion. No one dared to interfere in a clash between two overlord forces. No matter which side they chose to help, they would be viewed with hostility by the other side. That was why the geniuses around only dared to watch the battle, not to get involved. However, someone chose to interfere, which was beyond everyone's expectations. Everyone looked at the distant horizon and saw a figure coming through the air like a bolt of lightning. The figure was slender, like a king of swords. His black hair fluttered in the wind, making him look like a god. His demonic face covered his face, making him look like an Asura. It was none other than Yiguchin. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? That's Jinkui of the Sword Dynasty. How is this possible? Countless gasps sounded from all directions. Many people widened their eyes as they stared intently at the figure who was walking through the air with a sword in his hand. The news of Jinkui of the Sword Dynasty falling in the realm of Ruoshui was no secret. Almost all of the Holy Emperor realm had heard about it. Everyone knew that Jinkui of the Sword Dynasty had fallen in the mouth of the Kuan. However, when that figure appeared, everyone thought that they were hallucinating. They rubbed their eyes and looked again, but the figure was still the same. It really is Jinkui. He's still alive. He's not dead. Exclamations were heard, filled with extreme shock. Being able to come out alive after being swallowed by the Kuan had subverted everyone's imaginations. How is this possible? Crown Prince Xingyang was also very surprised, his eyes wide open. Even Jiang Qingsang and the other three were stunned, unable to come back to their senses for a while. That was because they saw Yiguchin being swallowed by the Kuan with their own eyes, which made them even more surprised. How could you still be alive? The fourth brother, Jiang Yuanlong, exclaimed in disbelief. Perhaps I'm lucky, or perhaps the heavens want me to take your lives. Yiguchin said coldly under the mask. He came all the way from the weak water realm, wanting to rush to the inner ring area. When they passed by the border, they sensed the fluctuations of a battle here, so they rushed over to take a look. Yiguchin made his move without hesitation when he saw that Jun Xiaoyao was trapped by the matrix of the 4-star lords and was about to die. Yiguchin's principle was to repay kindness with kindness and revenge with revenge. He did not forget that when Gu Xiaoyang and Song Yuyao arrived at the Tianhuang Plains, it was Jun Xiaoyao who saved him from death. Now that Jun Xiaoyao was on the brink of death, Yiguchin naturally could not turn a blind eye to it. Take our lives? Ha! What gives you the confidence? What qualifications do you have to say such ignorant words? Jiang Shiyu shook his head and sneered. Not only the 4-star lords, but the geniuses who were watching the battle also secretly shook their heads. That Jinkui escaped death. I'm afraid he's a little arrogant. That's right. Although I also want someone to help young Master Xiaoyao, what ability does Jinkui have to help young Master Xiaoyao, with his spiritual resonance broken? Many people sighed. It was not easy to find someone who was willing to help Jun Xiaoyao, but it had to be Jinkui, with his spiritual resonance broken. Could it be that the heavens wanted Jun Xiaoyao to die? Jun Xiaoyao himself also looked at Yiguchin. For some reason, he vaguely felt that the Jinkui of the Sword Dynasty with his ghastly face was somewhat familiar. However, Jun Xiaoyao did not think too much about it at the moment of life and death. He said, I'll remember that Jinkui of the Sword Dynasty is willing to help, but there's no need for it. Jun Xiaoyao did not want to get innocent people involved. Moreover, he still had a trump card that he had yet to use. If he was forced into a desperate situation and used his trump card, it was unknown who would live and who would die. You want to intervene and leave as you please? How is that possible? Jinkui, since you're lucky enough to not die in the mouth of the Kuan beast, then you shall die by my sword. As soon as Jiang Yuanlong finished speaking, the sword in his hand vibrated, bursting with spiritual qi of the 6th level of the spiritual residence. He directly stabbed at Yiguchin. That sword was meant to kill Yiguchin. Jun Xiaoyao frowned. He did not want to get innocent people involved, so he performed the freedom walk, intending to block Jiang Yuanlong's attack. However, Jiang Qingsang moved again and blocked Jun Xiaoyao. Seeing Jiang Yuanlong, who went straight for Yiguchin, everyone present secretly shook their heads. It seemed that Jinkui was destined to die today. Seeing Jiang Yuanlong coming straight for him, Yiguchin's eyes flashed coldly. To be honest, if Yiguchen wanted to deal with the four gods constellation heaven punishment formation, it would not be that easy. He would have to use many means. However, if he could kill one person first, then the entire four gods constellation heaven punishment formation would become incomplete, and its power would plummet. Furthermore, Jiang Yuanlong looked down on him, treating him as a cripple. That was the time for him to use his thunderous means. Yiguchen's combat instincts were so powerful that he made a prompt decision. His cultivation of the fourth level of the leakless divine residence completely burst out. He pointed his sword at the sky, causing the clouds to change color and lightning to flash. Yiguchen immediately added the power of the lightning sword will, then performed the strongest move of the divine sword lightning controlling chant. Divine sword lightning controlling chant, divine annihilation. A sword of wind and thunder. A sword of earth shattering. Yiguchen swung his sword, and the wind and thunder above the 9 heavens were all drawn down. In addition to the power of the lightning sword will, there was also the tenfold boost of the true chi of the leakless divine residence. The power of this sword was so powerful that it made one's heart tremble. How can this be? Jiang Yuanlong's expression changed drastically, and it was almost distorted as he let out a scream. He could not imagine how Yiguchen could perform such a sword move. Wasn't his divine residence broken? Wasn't he a cripple? This was the question that Jiang Yuanlong was thinking about at the last moment of his life. However, he would never be able to solve this question. Because in the next moment, Yiguchen's sword edge slashed across Jiang Yuanlong's body. Jiang Yuanlong originally looked down on Yiguchen, so the power of his move was not strong at all. Therefore, Yiguchen's sword power broke through Jiang Yuanlong's sword move as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Ah! A shrill scream that did not sound like a human's was heard. Jiang Yuanlong's entire body was cut in half by Yiguchen's 9-dragon thunder prison sword. His entire body was charred black, and it emitted a charred smell of electricity. The 2 halves of his charred body fell directly to the ground. The black tortoise star beast in the four gods constellation heaven punishment formation also collapsed into countless star spots following Jiang Yuanlong's death. The whole place was filled with a deathly silence. Everyone's body seemed to be petrified as they stood there, rooted to the spot. What exactly happened? What did they see? Many people suspected that there was something wrong with their eyes. Crown Prince Xingyang's expression also froze. Jiang Qingcang, Jiang Shiyu, and Jiang Wangqing also had blank and dazed expressions. Who could tell them what was going on? Chapter 1264. The minds of everyone present seemed to have short-circuited, unable to come back to their senses for a long time. That was because the news of Yiguchen's spiritual residence being broken by Huang Qianqiu had been circulating for a long time. Over time, everyone took it for granted that Yiguchen was a cripple. It was because of that understanding that everyone present was so shocked when Yiguchen killed Jiang Yuanlong with a single slash, unable to wrap their heads around it. However, everyone present was a genius from various forces. They suddenly came back to their senses and looked at Yiguchen with deep shock and surprise. Jiankui of the Sword Dynasty has his spiritual residence restored, indeed. Not only has it been restored, but its quality seems to be very high as well. It should be a flawless spiritual residence, right? I don't know, but that spiritual chi was so dense that it couldn't be a flawless spiritual residence, could it? After a short moment of silence, there was an endless uproar. Generally speaking, after one's spiritual residence was broken, there was no doubt that one would become a cripple. However, there were also some geniuses who had the ability to rebuild their spiritual residence. For example, some top geniuses could even break their own spiritual residence and rebuild it. Of course, such geniuses were very rare, and almost all of them were geniuses from overlord-level forces. Yiguchen, on the other hand, was only a genius from a dynasty. The fact that he could do such a thing shocked everyone. How could this be? His spiritual residence has been restored? Crown Prince Xingyang shook his head, somewhat in disbelief. His face was pale. If Jiankuei had recovered his previous talent and strength, wouldn't he be in a very bad situation? Crown Prince Xingyang took advantage of the fact that Yi Guqin's spiritual residence was broken to bully him many times. Crown Prince Xingyang felt a chill run down his spine when he thought of that. Jiang Qingsang and the other two finally came back to their senses. Fourth brother. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing shouted, their eyes spewing endless anger as if they were going to burn the sky. Damn it, Jiankuei, you set us up. Jiang Qingsang's face became unprecedentedly ugly. With Jiang Yuanlong dead, the entire Four Gods constellation Heaven Punishment formation became incomplete, and its power dropped right away. Under such circumstances, it would be extremely difficult to kill Jun Xiaoyao. And all of this was caused by Yi Guqin. Die! Jiang Qingsang angrily attacked, controlling the power of the Azure Dragon Star Beast to suppress Yi Guqin. Jun Xiaoyao was also surprised by Yi Guqin's true powers, but his eyes were filled with excitement at the moment. The power of the Four Gods constellation Heaven Punishing formation had been greatly reduced, and the pressure on him had also been greatly alleviated. Your opponent is me. Jun Xiaoyao blocked Jiang Qingsang's attack right away. Second brother, third brother, kill that Jiankuei and avenge fourth brother. Jiang Qingsang shouted angrily. Yes. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing charged out with bloodshot eyes. You despicable bastard. You purposefully held back so that fourth brother would underestimate you before killing you in a single strike. What right do you have to be called Jiankuei and a natural saint? Jiang Wangqing was furious. Ha! Why does the word despicable sound so ironic when it comes from you? Yi Guqin sneered. How could the Four Star Lords find it embarrassing to criticize someone else for being despicable? Moreover, he had grievances with the Four Star Lords in the first place, so it was not inappropriate for him to use any method to deal with them. Humph, despicable bastard. I'll kill you directly. Jiang Wangqing used his powerful technique after saying that. Star God Scorpion. Jiang Wangqing stabbed his sword at the space around him as sword chi erupted. It seemed to form an illusionary star scorpion that lunged towards Yi Guqin. Jiang Shiyu, on the other hand, also unleashed a move. Star Force of 1,000 Shadows. Star sword chi erupted, crisscrossing and slicing apart the space around them. It was like the space before them had been ripped apart. It was extremely powerful. Two of the Four Star Lords had used powerful techniques at the same time. It was a chilling sight. I wonder if Jiankuei can withstand it now. Yeah. The main reason why he could kill Jiang Yuanlong in a single strike was because Jiang Yuanlong had underestimated him too much. He did not use his full strength at all. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to be killed in a single strike. All the prodigies paid close attention to the battle. Yi Guqin saw Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing pincer attack him. He didn't show the slightest bit of timidity or fear. Yi Guqin no longer needed to fear the prodigies of any lord-level organization now that his divine dwellings had transformed and his strength had skyrocketed. Star-shattering sword of extinction, moon sword of earth, sun sword of extinction. Yi Guqin performed 3 moves of the absolute sword in succession and then combined them into 2 powerful moves. Star-sun flowing fire. Reversal of stars and moon. Rumble. A series of sword rays shot out along with the starlight. It was as if dozens of stars had exploded at the same time. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing both retreated. They looked at the center of the explosion and sneered. Yi Guqin has probably died. Even the prodigies of lord-level organizations might not be able to withstand the combined attacks of the two brothers. However, as the smoke and dust dispersed, a figure holding a long sword stood calmly in the air. He's actually not at a disadvantage. Many prodigies gasped when they saw this scene. Had this prodigy's strength already reached the level of lord-level prodigies? It seems that the sword leader of the Sword Dynasty is the same as Zhao Shinkong of the War God Dynasty, Dugu Qiuma of the Maluo Dynasty, and Zhang Sun Aojue of the Tyrant Saber Dynasty. They all possess strength that is not inferior to overlord-level heavenly prides. Some people pondered. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing's expressions froze. The last trace of contempt in their eyes finally disappeared. They finally understood that even if Jiang Yuanlong attacked with all his might, he might not be Ye Guqin's match. There was a high chance that he would be killed instead. Second brother, this kid is strange. Don't hold back. Jiang Wangqing frowned. That's right. Don't let your guard down. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing looked at each other and both of them activated their sword principal domains. Two pitch-black sword Dao territories spread out in the air and suppressed Ye Guqin. It was the curse sword Dao and shadow sword Dao territories. Seeing the two of them activating their sword Dao territories, Ye Guqin's lips curled into a smile. Activating their sword Dao territories in front of him. One had to know that Ye Guqin was the master of swordsmanship. Ye Guqin raised his sword and a violent sword will surged out. Endless nine-colored Xian thunder surged and spread. Then, it condensed into a blazing thunderbolt in the air. Then, hundreds of lightning suddenly spread out from the ball of lightning, as if turning the heaven and earth avatar into a lightning cage. It was the lightning sword Dao territory, heaven's punishment thunder prison. Not only that, but there were also 5 colored sword rays rising from Ye Guqin's body. There seemed to be phantoms of the 5 elements divine beasts around him and the power of the sword qi of the 5 elements spread out in the air. It was the sword Dao territory of the 5 elements sword Dao, 5 elements sword realm. At this moment, Ye Guqin alone displayed 2 realms of sword principle, which collided with Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing's realms of sword principle. Dual sword realm. All the surrounding skyprides felt their scalps go numb and their bodies trembled when they saw this scene. It was very rare to see a skypride who had comprehended 2 supreme sword Daos. All of them were geniuses of sword Dao. Damn it, Jiankui actually has such a skill. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing's eyes darkened at the same time. Ye Guqin was not afraid of them at all in terms of sword Dao territories. In fact, Ye Guqin still had the Azura sword Dao and edgeless sword Dao that he had not used yet. If he used all 4 sword Dao territories, these people would be shocked to the extreme. Chapter 1265. Kaboom! There was a huge collision in the sky. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing's cursing sword Wei and shadow sword Wei clashed with Ye Guqin's lightning sword Wei and 5 elements sword Wei. Endless sword aura burst out, and the waves seemed to be able to overturn the clouds in the sky. It was an extreme collision of sword ways, and the sky seemed to be trembling. What was even more shocking was that Ye Guqin was alone with his dual sword domain, fighting against Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing. The scene was quite shocking. Is this the true strength of Jiankui of the Sword Dynasty? The thousands of geniuses who were watching the battle all took a deep breath, unable to hide the shock in their eyes. Since the opening of the sacred imperial realm, Ye Guqin had been shown to the world as having his spiritual residence destroyed. Therefore, many people subconsciously thought that Jiankui of the Sword Dynasty wouldn't be that strong even if he recovered his strength. But now, when they saw Ye Guqin fighting against 2 geniuses and not being at a disadvantage, they truly had a new impression of Ye Guqin. He was the top genius of the First Dynasty. Damn it, how did this kid become so strong? Crown Prince Xingyang, who was watching the battle, looked extremely pale. Ye Guqin's true strength was far beyond his expectations. After figuring out the strength of both sides, Crown Prince Xingyang found that if he were to fight against Ye Guqin, he would have almost no chance of winning. Young masters, you must kill that Jiankui. Crown Prince Xingyang could only pray that Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing could kill Jiankui. Otherwise, he would be the one to die. The battle continued in the sky. Jun Xiaoyao and Jiang Qingcang were fighting on the other side. Jiang Qingcang was in a stalemate with Jun Xiaoyao with the power of the Tsang Dragon Star Beast. On the other side, Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing swore to kill Ye Guqin. Is that all the strength of the 4 Star Lords? Ye Guqin sneered. Although his cultivation level was only at the 4th layer of the divine dwelling, because of the seamless divine dwelling's tenfold increase in qi, the density of his qi wasn't the slightest bit inferior to the 2 6th layer heaven prides. You're courting death. How dare a genius from an empire be so arrogant? Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing were enraged. They strengthened the white tiger star beast and the vermilion bird star beast once again and executed their strongest moves. Star refining devil slaying sword. Jiang Shiyu slashed out with his sword, and billions of starlight gathered on the tip of his sword. Dazzling starlight burst out, as if the light illuminated the heavens and the earth. With a wave of his sword, the clouds in the horizon were split into two. This was Jiang Shiyu's ultimate move. Seeing this, Jiang Wangqing also used his ultimate move. Star refining meteor shower. The starry sword qi burst forth as if they had turned into tens of thousands of shooting stars, covering the sky densely. Then, they all shot toward Yiguchen, as if there was an apocalyptic meteor shower. The two's ultimate moves intertwined in the void, and their power multiplied. If it were any other genius facing such an ultimate move, they would feel a chill from the bottom of their heart, and they would be incomparably terrified. Ha! That's great. This Jiankui is definitely going to die. Crown Prince Xingyang, who was watching the battle from afar, revealed a smile on his face. Only by completely killing Yiguchen would he be able to rest easy. Seeing the two's ultimate moves, Yiguchen's expression was incomparably calm under the mask. If he had not broken through, Yiguchen might really have to think twice before facing such a powerful move. But now, there was no need for that at all. Yiguchen held the 9-dragon thunder prison in one hand, and his sword pointed toward the heavens, while his other hand pointed toward the earth. Heaven as Qian. Earth as Kun. Qian Kun one breath, peerless sacred sword. What Yiguchen used was the sword sect's ultimate move, Qian Kun one breath sacred sword. A golden sword ray that was hundreds of feet long traversed the heavens and the earth, bursting forth with extremely powerful fluctuations. What kind of move is that? It's so powerful. Exclamations came from all directions. The power of the sword sect's ultimate move shocked everyone's eyes. Well, just as Yiguchen brought out the Qian Kun one breath sacred sword, Jun Xiaoyao, who was fighting with Jiang Qingsong, seemed to have sensed something, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. On the back of his hand, there was also a faint imprint. However, that mark was not the sword mark of the sword sect echelon, nor was it the swastika of the sword Buddha echelon. Instead, it was an emblem in the shape of a wine gourd. Heh! Interesting. Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. On the other side, Yiguchen used the Qian Kun one breath sacred sword and collided with the powerful moves of Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing. Suddenly, the heavens and the earth collapsed, and a powerful spiritual qi storm swept in all directions. Countless cracks appeared on the ground, and a great tremor occurred. The thousands of geniuses who were watching hurriedly retreated even further away. Crown Prince Xingyang also retreated far away, feeling somewhat nervous as he waited for the result. He did not run away, because he knew that in the Saint Emperor realm, as long as Jiankui wanted to find him, he would not be able to escape. Therefore, his only hope was for Jiang Shiyu and the others to completely kill Yiguchen. Everyone's gazes were tightly fixed on the battlefield, where smoke was spreading out. Cough, cough, the sound of coughing blood rang out. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing both retreated, their arms bleeding. Their bodies were wounded by the sword qi, and blood flowed out. On the other side, Yiguchen's body shook, and the blood in his chest churned. The 4-star lords were overlord-level geniuses after all, and their powerful moves had also caused some injuries to Yiguchen. However, it was clear who had the upper hand when compared to the two sides. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing are at an absolute disadvantage. Cries of surprise rang out. No one had expected such an outcome. How is this possible? Crown Prince Xingyang's body shook, and his face gradually turned pale. Damn it, how many trump cards does this kid have? Is he really just a genius from an empire? Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing wiped the blood from the corners of their mouths, their faces extremely ugly. If someone told them that Yi Guqin was a hidden genius from an overlord-level faction, they would believe it. You're done with your moves. It's my turn now. Yi Guqin said as he raised his hand, activating the power of the divine dwellings in his dantian. In an instant, a ball of water appeared in Yi Guqin's hand. Looking at the ball of water, everyone present was somewhat astonished. That's it? Is Jinkui joking? What move is that? It looks like a ball of water. Everyone was puzzled. Because Yi Guqin had used a powerful move like the sacred sword of heaven and earth. But now, his ultimate move was just a ball of water. Wasn't the disparity a little too great? Is Jinkui purposely trying to mystify us? Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing's faces hardened as well. Yi Guqin flicked his finger, and the ball of water immediately exploded, turning into droplets that enveloped Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Wangqing. The droplets produced an ear-piercing whistle as they shot out, like a sharp weapon ripping through the air. This meant that every droplet of water was extremely heavy. Oh no, retreat! Jiang Shiyu suddenly returned to his senses and retreated in a hurry. Jiang Wangqing was unable to react in time. All he could do was block with his sword. Spurt! 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 A series of sounds rang out. It was the sound of flesh being pierced. Jiang Wangqing's entire body was riddled with bloody holes. He seemed like a sieve. Jiang Wangqing came to a halt as blood flowed from his mouth and nose. Afterwards, he directly fell from the sky. The second of the 4 Star Lords had died. Chapter 1266. They looked at Jiang Wangqing, who had fallen from the sky and been killed instantly. Everyone was stunned. Some people did not even come back to their senses. Was Jiang Wangqing so weak that he could not even defend himself against the water droplets? However, the people present were not fools. They quickly came back to their senses. No, it's those water droplets. Every single droplet is as heavy as 10,000 caddies. They directly penetrated Jiang Wangqing's body. Could that water be the legendary mystic origin heavy water? A genius couldn't help but exclaim. Xianyuan heavy water was an extremely rare treasure. Third brother. Jiang Shiyu and Jiang Qingsong, who were not far away, both shouted. Their eyes were bloodshot. 2 of the 4 Star Lords had died at the hands of an empire's prodigy. Who would believe it if news of this spread? Jinkui, you really dare to kill us. Aren't you afraid of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's revenge? Jiang Shiyu's eyes were bloodshot as his body trembled. The 4 Star Lords had always been united against a common enemy. They were always together no matter where they went. However, 2 of them had died. This was a loss that they could not bear. Don't you think it's a little stupid to say something like this now? Yi Guqin said indifferently. He sighed in his heart. With Yi Guqin's current cultivation level, he could not completely activate the Xianyuan heavy water in his spiritual dwelling in his dantian. Otherwise, the Xianyuan heavy water could easily crush Jiang Shiyu and the others into a puddle of blood. Currently, he could only control a small amount of Xianyuan heavy water. Damn it! Jiang Shiyu's face was gloomy as his gaze kept changing. He wanted to avenge Jiang Wangqing and Jiang Yuanlong. However, he noticed Yi Guqin's calmness. This meant that Yi Guqin might not have used his full strength yet. Jinkui hasn't used all his trump cards yet. What kind of freak is he? Jiang Shiyu roared in his heart. However, his rationality overpowered his anger. He swung his sword and the sword radiance fell towards Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin blocked it with his sword. Jiang Shiyu's figure abruptly retreated. When Jiang Qingsong, who was fighting Jun Xiaoyao not far away, saw what was happening, his face darkened. He looked reluctant, but he also decided to retreat. You want to leave just like that? Do you think it's that easy? Yi Guqin said coldly. The 4-star lords had already been on his list of people he had to kill. Yi Guchen would not let any of them off. He, well said. I won't let you leave so easily. Jun Xiaoyao smiled as well, intending to cut off Jiang Qingsang's path. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, used the divine movement secret technique. Like a bolt of lightning, his figure swept towards Jiang Shiyu. So fast. Jiang Shiyu was shocked. Gritting his teeth, he summoned the 4 gods' constellation heaven punishing formation and shouted, "Formation seal, explode." Jiang Shiyu had actually detonated the array seal. Boom! The moment he finished speaking, the white tiger star beast controlled by Jiang Shiyu let out a roar and exploded with a loud bang. The power of tremors swept out. Even Yi Guchen's figure was obstructed and he quickly retreated. Jiang Shiyu took the opportunity to retreat. Seeing this, Jiang Qingsang's heart bled and he immediately detonated the formation seal. The Tsang dragon star beast also exploded, blocking Jun Xiaoyao's figure. Jiang Qingsang and Jiang Shiyu hurriedly ran away, fleeing in a sorry state. That hurried back figure was rather disheveled and disheveled. Jinkui, Jun Xiaoyao, your lives will end in the Holy Emperor realm. Jiang Qingsang did not forget to leave a ruthless sentence before leaving. Wait. Me too. Crown Prince Xinyang's face was as pale as paper. He also wanted to escape. However, Jiang Qingsang and Jiang Shiyu were simply too fast. They disappeared without a trace. Crown Prince Xinyang's heart instantly sank to the bottom. At the same time, the smoke and dust from the explosion also dissipated. Yi Guchen looked at the 2 people who disappeared and felt it was a pity. Even he did not expect that the 2 would choose to escape by detonating the formation seal. They were rather bold. However, this also meant that Jiang Qingsang and Jiang Shiyu would never be able to use the 4 gods' constellation heaven-slaying formation again. It doesn't matter. As long as they are still in the Holy Emperor realm, it won't be difficult to find and kill them. Moreover, I have a feeling that they will take the initiative to come to us again, Yi Guchen thought to himself. He knew Jiang Qingsang's character. He was definitely a vengeful person. He had killed 2 of the 4-star lords. Jiang Qingsang would definitely seek revenge for this blood feud. And Yi Guchen had already guessed the only way to get back at him. Heh. Will he go to Gu Shaoyang for help? Well, that's good too. When the time comes, I'll take care of them together. However, there's still one more person to deal with, Yi Guchen thought as he looked at the figure who was trying to leave. Crown Prince Xinyang, where are you going? Yi Guchen's tone was as cold as ice. A fly may be small, but it was also annoying. Crown Prince Xinyang had been causing trouble for him since the holy city of fortune. When he was in the realm of weak water, he had purposely stirred up conflict between him and the 4-star lords. Therefore, Crown Prince Xinyang was someone Yi Guchen had to get rid of. Jinkui, I am the Crown Prince of the Celestial Empire. Are you really not going to give me any face? Crown Prince Xinyang's face was pale and his tone was panicked. He had relied on the 4-star lords and the Starry Sword Pavilion to intimidate others in the Holy Emperor realm. Now, he had finally kicked the iron plate and suffered the consequences of his own actions. I have nothing more to say to you. Yi Guchen could not be bothered to say anything more to Crown Prince Xinyang. Holding the 9-dragon thunder prison, he swung his sword. Crown Prince Xinyang naturally could not sit still and do nothing. He resisted with all his might. However, there was no way Crown Prince Xinyang could beat Yi Guchen in his current state. However, Crown Prince Xinyang was decapitated by the 9-dragon thunder prison after only a few moves. All the geniuses who were watching were shocked and fearful. In an instant, Yi Guchen's danger level was raised to the peak. He was someone who did not care about background and killed whoever he wanted. No one wanted to be Yi Guchen's enemy. After Crown Prince Xinyang was killed, the matter finally came to an end. Jun Xiaoyao stepped forward and cupped his hands at Yi Guchen. Thank you, Jinkui, for stepping in. I am grateful. You're welcome. Actually, I did something unnecessary. With Brother Jun's strength, even if I didn't do anything, you wouldn't necessarily lose, would you? Yiguchen's eyes were deep as he smiled faintly. He could sense that Jun Xiaoyao had not fully revealed his strength even when he was trapped in the Four Gods constellation's heaven-slaying formation. He still had a trump card that he had not used. Therefore, even if the Four Star Lords surrounded Jun Xiaoyao with the formation, it was hard to say who would win in the end. Hee hee. Jun Xiaoyao smiled and did not comment. Regardless, I still have to thank Jinkui for stepping in. However, I have a question. Have we met before? Jun Xiaoyao smirked and looked straight into Yiguchen's eyes with a profound look in his eyes. Chapter 1267. Jun Xiaoyao had such a feeling ever since Yiguchen showed up. While Jinkui of the Sword Dynasty was wearing a mask, Jun Xiaoyao still felt a sense of familiarity. Yiguchen shivered slightly. Jun Xiaoyao's senses were extremely sharp. It had been such a long time, yet Jun Xiaoyao still had such an intuition. Heh. We're all brothers. As long as we hit it off, there's no need for us to know each other, Yiguchen said. Jun Wentian was slightly stunned, then smiled and said, there's no need for us to know each other when we meet. Jinkui of the Sword Dynasty, you've really impressed me. There's no need to be so polite, Brother Jun. The Four Star Lords have conflicts with me as well, so I didn't just help you out this time. Yiguchen shook his head and said. No matter what, Jinkui helped me out. That's the truth. I'm not an ungrateful person. If you have any trouble in the future, Jinkui, you can come to me. Jun Xiaoyao smiled and said. He had always been a carefree person, and he was quick to repay favors and grudges. Jun Xiaoyao would never forget anyone who had done him a favor, not even for a moment. To a certain extent, he was similar to Yiguchen's clear distinction between kindness and grudges. Ha, you're too kind. I still have to look for the other sword masters, so I'll take my leave for now. Yiguchen cupped his hands and said. Alright, I'll see you in the inner circle. Jun Xiaoyao was not one to drag things out, so he nodded slightly. Yiguchen then stepped into the air and left. The friendship between gentlemen was as plain as water, straightforward and clean. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep as he watched Yiguchen leave. Who could it be? But it doesn't matter. If you're willing, you'll reveal yourself in the future, Jun Xiaoyao mumbled to himself. He did not try to find out Jinkui's identity by force. He would find out when the time came anyway. The battle was like a storm that swept through the entire sacred imperial realm. In addition, there were thousands of sky prides watching the battle. They spread the news everywhere. Outside the Holy Emperor world, the atmosphere was eerily silent. Especially on the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's side, the atmosphere was so tense that it was about to freeze. The Seventh Star Lord's face was gloomy. He was no longer as confident as before. Ha ha ha. I really didn't expect this to be the result. On the side of the Luofu Sword Pavilion, Elder Qing Song laughed heartily. He was in an incomparably carefree mood. Who asked you to kill the Luofu Sword Pavilion's first seat? In the end, he still went for wool and came home shorn, suffering a double loss. Not only had they failed, but 2 of the 4 Star Lords had even died. This was a huge loss to the Starry Sword Pavilion. How can this be? The 7th Star Lord was infuriated. Even he did not expect that Jinkui from the Sword Dynasty, who he thought was nothing but an ant, would be able to turn the situation around all by himself, causing the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion to suffer great losses. Sword Dynasty, how dare you? The 7th Star Lord stared coldly at Wu Hongyan and Confuzi from the Sword Dynasty. Wu Hongyan and Confuzi were furious as well. Did the 7th Star Lord think that the Sword Dynasty was a pushover? When the 4 Star Lords had forced Yiguchen, the Sword Dynasty had not said anything either. Now that 2 of the 4 Star Lords had died, the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion had targeted them. Elder Qing Song said as well, Seventh Star Lord, you haven't forgotten the rules of the battlefield of geniuses, have you? The fate of the participating Sky Prides is up to fate. You can't implicate the organizations behind you. Elder Qing Song, don't get cocky. You should know that the 4 Star Lords are not the only Sky Prides in the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, the 7th Star Lord said sternly. Is there another Gu Xiaoyang? Elder Qing Song said indifferently. However, as one of the 10 young masters, Gu Xiaoyang was indeed a difficult person to deal with. However, Elder Qing Song was not worried at all. On the side of the Starry Empire, Xing Mo's face was trembling from anger. The Crown Prince of the Starry Empire had died again. The last one to die was the Xinghong Crown Prince. Now, the new Xinghong Crown Prince had died again. Many people from the other empires looked at the Sky Star Empire with pity in their eyes. In the future, no prince of the Starry Empire would dare to fight for the position of Crown Prince. No, to be more precise, most of the princes of the Starry Empire had died in the Saint Emperor world. At the same time, the news of the battle had spread throughout the Saint Emperor world. Mu Xingzu, Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, Jiang Fengmian, and the other swordsmen had all received news that Yi Guqin was still alive and that his strength had skyrocketed. Their sorrow had turned into extreme joy. The knot in their hearts had finally been untied. However, they were not the only ones who had received the news. In a certain realm, Zhao Shinkong and Zhao Xiaodi were traveling together. They had also received this news. Jiankui's strength has skyrocketed. He killed 2 of the 4 Star Lords in a row. Zhao Weihuang also died to his hands. Zhao Shinkong frowned. He wore platinum dragon-patterned armor and wielded the Daluo golden spear. He was handsome and dignified. However, his face was extremely stern right now. Although his relationship with Zhao Weihuang could not be considered as a life-and-death brother, it was still not bad. In the War God Empire, Zhao Shinkong and Zhao Weihuang were known as the prodigies of heaven and earth, because one of them was the son of the Heaven War Emperor, while the other was the son of the Earth War Emperor. However, Zhao Weihuang had died to Yi Guqin now. This greatly shocked Zhao Shinkong. Brother, do you really want to become enemies with Jiankui and Dugu Wubai? Zhao Xiaodi asked worriedly from one side. It doesn't matter if I'm willing or not. I have no other choice right now. The War God Empire and Sword Dynasty have always been competitors. Coupled with the fact that he's killed Zhao Weihuang, how will the outside world view our War God Empire if I don't do anything? Zhao Shinkong frowned. But, no one who becomes enemies with Dugu Wubai seems to have a good ending. Zhao Xiaodi was extremely worried and conflicted. She had once traveled with Yi Guqin in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. She also understood just how powerful this composed and reserved young man was. Those who went against him usually didn't have a good ending. Sister, this isn't a matter of whether I'm willing or not. As the number 1 on the War God Empire's War God list, I have no choice. Zhao Shinkong's eyes were resolute. He was stronger than Zhao Weihuang. Therefore, he didn't have to be too afraid of Jiankui. When the time came, the outcome would be decided by the heavens. In a certain place in the inner circle, a white-robed young man with a jade-like appearance was digesting an opportunity. There seemed to be countless sword auras circulating around him. It was the top genius of the Heavenly God Sword Sect, Chu Xuanzhen with the Sword King body. The 4 Star Lords of the Starry Sword Pavilion are all trash. It would have been fine if they were killed by Jun Xiaoyao, but they were killed by a small Sword Dynasty's Jiankui. Chu Xuanzhen shook his head slightly, his tone cold and contemptuous. As a genius of an overlord-level force, being killed by a dynasty's genius was definitely a humiliation. But this has nothing to do with me. In the entire Sacred Emperor realm, only Huang Qianqiu, Jun Xiaoyao, and a few others are qualified to be my opponent, Chu Xuanzhen muttered to himself as he shook his head. As for a small Jiankui, in his eyes, he was just an ant that he could casually crush. There was no need to care about him at all. At that moment, Jiang Qingsang and Jiang Shiyu, who were fleeing in panic, finally found Gu Xiaoyang. Chapter 1268. At this moment, Gu Xiaoyang was sitting cross-legged in a spiritual qi, cultivating. Around his body, astral true qi surged, emitting a powerful aura. He had reached the 7th level of the divine dwelling realm. Gu Xiaoyang was already at the 6th level of the divine dwelling realm, and with the help of this spiritual qi, his cultivation had reached another level. Dugu Qiu Mo, just you wait. Gu Xiaoyang opened his eyes, which flashed with hostility. Because of Dugu Qiu Mo, Gu Xiaoyang's prestige had been greatly reduced. Many heavens' prides were discussing how Gu Xiaoyang couldn't even suppress a heaven's pride in the Maluo dynasty. Therefore, Gu Xiaoyang had been working hard during this period of time, and his cultivation had reached a new level. However, at that moment, Gu Xiaoyang noticed the two figures that were rushing over in a sorry state. Jiang Qingsang, Jiang Shiyu, it's you. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. In his impression, the 4 star lords had always acted together and had never separated. Gu Xiaoyang immediately became alert. He glanced around with the corner of his eyes, thinking that the remaining 2 people were hiding in the dark. He said coldly, Jiang Qingsang, although we are competitors, we are still members of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Do you want to take my spiritual qi? Gu Xiaoyang mistakenly thought that Jiang Qingsang and the others wanted his spiritual qi. Jiang Qingsang's eyes revealed a hint of bone-deep hatred. Then, under Gu Xiaoyang's extremely surprised gaze, he bowed to Gu Xiaoyang and cupped his hands. What's going on? Did the sun rise from the west? Gu Xiaoyang thought to himself, very surprised. He and the 4 star lords were all members of the 7 great bears. Although they weren't like fire and water in the Starry Sword Pavilion, they were still competitors. If they encountered any trouble, it would be considered very good if they didn't add insult to injury. Gu Xiaoyang, for the sake that we are all disciples of the same sect, please do something. Jiang Qingsang's eyes were blood-red with bone-deep hatred. If it were any other time, Jiang Qingsang would never bow to Gu Xiaoyang. However, Jiang Qingsang knew that it would be difficult for him and Jiang Shiyu to take on Jun Xiaoyao and Yi Guqin by themselves. Therefore, the only person he could ask for help was Gu Xiaoyang. What's going on? Tell me about it, Gu Xiaoyang's eyes flashed. Next, Jiang Qingsang told Gu Xiaoyang everything that had happened. There was actually such a thing. That Jin Kuei actually dared to kill Jiang Wangcheng and Jiang Yuanlong? Gu Xiaoyang was also very surprised after hearing that. On one hand, he was surprised by the strength of Jin Kuei from the Sword Dynasty. On the other hand, he was also surprised that Jin Kuei had the guts to kill someone from the Starry Sword Pavilion. Gu Xiaoyang, I know that we've always been competitors, but now, not only will others laugh at us 4 star lords, they'll laugh at the entire Starry Sword Pavilion. As a result, please take action. Let's kill Jin Kuei and Jun Xiaoyao together, said Jiang Qingsang. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes flashed. He didn't know that Yi Guqin was Jin Kuei, so Gu Xiaoyang didn't pay much attention to Jin Kuei. However, Gu Xiaoyang did want to deal with Jun Xiaoyao. How about this? I can do it, but you two have to listen to my orders in the future. From now on, I'll be the leader of the younger generation of the Starry Sword Pavilion, said Gu Xiaoyang. Sure. Jiang Qingsang and Jiang Shiyu both agreed. For the sake of revenge, paying such a small price was nothing. Okay, since you agreed so readily, and I'm not a wishy-washy person, let's plan how to deal with them. Gu Xiaoyang smiled faintly. The 3 of them got together and began to discuss the plan. At the same time, Yi Guqin had already entered the inner circle of the Holy Emperor realm. He had already expected that Jiang Qingsang and Jiang Shiyu would probably go back to ask for help from Gu Xiaoyang. However, that was also what Yi Guqin wanted. After all, he had already decided to settle things with Gu Xiaoyang in the Holy Emperor realm. I still need to look for opportunities to improve my strength. Only with strength can I be fearless, Yi Guqin mumbled to himself. The truly precious opportunities in the Holy Emperor realm were all in the inner circle. After Yi Guqin entered the inner circle, he had been searching for opportunities in the inner circle. In just a few hours, Yi Guqin sensed that there were some geniuses around him who seemed to be gathering in one direction. Yi Guqin stopped one of them and asked. Just as that genius looked impatient, he turned around and saw Yi Guqin. The impatience on his face immediately turned into nervousness and fear. Jiankuei of the Sword Dynasty had become famous in the Holy Emperor realm. Anyone who faced this Jiankuei who could kill geniuses of overlord forces without hesitation would feel fear. Lord Jiankuei, what is it? That genius stammered. Where are you going? Yi Guqin asked calmly. Lord Jiankuei, it is said that there are 5 mountains in the inner circle. I think they are called the 5-finger mountain of enlightenment. Anyone who can climb the 999 steps will gain unimaginable enlightenment, that genius said. Oh. So it is a place of enlightenment. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. Now, his cultivation level had already improved greatly. For the time being, there was no need for him to continue improving his cultivation level. That would make him unstable. It was the most suitable time for Yi Guqin to have the opportunity to comprehend the Tao. After all, there were too many things he needed to understand. Yi Guqin had yet to comprehend the true meaning of reincarnation when the 8 swords were combined into one. Yi Guqin had yet to comprehend the all-creation sword will to the all-creation sword way. Yi Guqin also needed to comprehend the ultimate sword realm and other trump cards. The 5-finger mountain of enlightenment was undoubtedly the best springboard for Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin did not hesitate. He used the divine movement's secret skill and flew in the direction of the 5-finger mountain of enlightenment. Looking at Yi Guqin's departing figure, that prodigy sighed and said, wherever the sword leader goes, there's always a storm. It seems like the 5 fingers of enlightenment mountain will not be peaceful. The 5-finger mountain of enlightenment was located in the inner circle. Looking around, the 5 mountains were arranged side by side. They were of different heights, like the 5 fingers of a human. A strange Taoist rhyme permeated the air, making the geniuses feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. They felt as if they were suddenly enlightened. At this moment, spirit chi surged on the 5-finger mountain of enlightenment. It was extremely mysterious. TSK, rumor has it that the 5-finger mountain of enlightenment was formed by the hand bone left behind by the immortal sage emperor. It is truly unimaginable. Yeah, 5 fingers forming 5 mountains. What kind of miracle is this? The 5-finger mountain of enlightenment is about to open. I really want to climb up. You are thinking too much. Each mountain has 999 steps. The higher you climb, the better the effect of enlightenment. Ordinary geniuses would find it difficult to reach the 100th step. Many geniuses had already gathered around the 5-finger mountain of enlightenment. They were all discussing. Suddenly, there was the sound of something breaking through the air. 2 figures appeared at this place. Everyone looked over and their eyes froze. It's them. Chapter 1269. The newcomer was a young man with long, snow-white hair. He wore a white robe and carried a long crystal blade on his back. His bearing was extremely extraordinary. He was the chosen of the battle god Saber sect, one of the 10 great Gongzi, young master Fusheng Dao Wumeng. Beside him stood a slightly dispirited and unkempt young man with messy hair and a messy beard. If Yi Guqin was here, he would definitely recognize this young man. It was the 7 deadly saber demon, Gu Zun. Starting from the Saint Origin dynasty, Gu Zun had also grown stronger and stronger. The chosen of the battle god Saber sect has come. It seems that he wants to challenge the 999 steps of the 5-finger Tao Comprehension Mountain. I wonder if he can succeed. The one beside him should be the rumored Gu Zun who received the inheritance of the 7 deadly saber saint. He seems to have come from a low-level empire, but his strength has reached the 6th layer of the divine dwelling realm. Many people looked at Gu Zun with surprise and fear. Gu Zun was definitely one of the heaven prides who had risen to fame in the sacred emperor realm. What made people most afraid of him was his indifferent and ruthlessness. No one was willing to face him. The five-finger Tao Comprehension Mountain is a good place to comprehend the Tao. Gu Zun, you can also use it to comprehend the 7 deadly saber technique and the peerless saber technique, Dao Wumeng said with a smile. Gu Zun nodded. The 7 deadly saber technique and the peerless saber technique that he had inherited from the 7 deadly saber saints still had room for improvement and transformation. But at this moment, a voice came from not far away. Gu Zun, I didn't expect you to grow to such a level in just a few months. The voice was slightly hoarse. Everyone around, including Gu Zun and Dao Wumeng, looked over. They saw a black-robed young man with 3 sabers on his back. There was biting cold saber chi surging around him, as if cutting the void. It's Zhangsun Aojue, the number 1 on the saber ranking of the Tyrant Saber Empire. There were gasps of surprise when they saw the young man. Zhangsun Aojue was definitely one of the strongest heaven prides of the empire. He, along with the Sword Dynasty's Jin Kuei, the War God Dynasty's Zhao Shinkong, and the Mara Dynasty's Dugu Qilma, were all prodigies of the 4 great dynasties. The prodigies of the 4 dynasties were publicly acknowledged to be on par with the prodigies of the overlord forces. Changsun Aojue. Gu Zun's numb eyes moved. Previously, when he was training in the tyrannical Blade Dynasty, he had also fought with Zhangsun Aojue. He could be considered an opponent. Gu Zun, this time at the 5-finger Tao Comprehension Mountain, we can have a good competition again, Zhangsun Aojue said indifferently. Gu Zun nodded. Ah. That's right. There's also that Sword Dynasty's Jin Kuei. If he dares to appear here, I'll have to ask him for advice. A cold light appeared in Zhangsun Aojue's eyes. The geniuses of the tyrannical Saber Dynasty, including Feng Shailian and Jin Taiji, had all died at the hands of Yi Guqin. If Xiao Chen, who ranked first on the Saber ranking, did not do anything, he would not be able to do anything. The outside world had thought that he was afraid of Yi Guqin. Moreover, the Sword Dynasty and the tyrannical Blade Dynasty had always had a conflict between swords and sabers. Therefore, Zhangsun Aojue would not let Yi Guqin off so easily. Jin Kuei, huh? Gu Zun muttered. This reminded him of the past. He had once fought with a top genius in the way of the sword at the top of the Forbidden City. That battle had been earth-shattering. Unfortunately, Gu Zun did not have the chance to personally end this feud. This was Gu Zun's greatest regret in his life. As time passed, more and more prodigies gathered. On the 5-finger Tao Comprehension Mountain, various types of spiritual chi surged and divine light danced. Clearly, it would not be long before it completely opened. At this moment, another 2 figures arrived. One big and one small. They were the siblings, Zhao Shinkong and Zhao Xiaodi. The people from the War God Dynasty are here. The surrounding prodigies looked over. The War God Dynasty's Xiao Weihuang's death at the hands of Yi Guqin had caused quite a stir. Tisk, interesting. Even Zhao Shinkong and Zhangsun Aojue are here. I wonder if Dugu Qilma and Jin Kuei will come as well. If that's the case, the top prodigies of the 4 dynasties will all be gathered here, someone said with interest. It's hard to say about Jin Kuei. If he appears here, how can Zhangsun Aojue and Zhao Shinkong let him go? I'm rather looking forward to Jin Kuei's appearance. I wonder who is the strongest among the 4 dynasties' prodigies. I bet it's Dugu Qilma. He even made Qin Qingxiao, a prodigy on the Dragon Phoenix list, his servant. A lot of heated discussions could be heard from all directions. Sob. Dugu Wubai, please don't come. Zhao Xiaodi prayed in her heart. She did not want her elder brother to go against Yi Guqin. Hee, it's so lively here. Suddenly, a crisp and charming voice rang out. A woman in a black dress with a black veil covering her face appeared. She was tall and slender, with stunning curves. Her eyes were as seductive as water. As soon as she appeared, she attracted the attention of many male prodigies. This woman was none other than Witch Wan, Witch, I didn't expect you to come too, Dao Wumeng said calmly. As a member of the three major sects, Dao Wumeng was one of the few people present who could treat Wan calmly. However, the demonic annihilation sect did not have a good reputation in the South Horizon region. They also did not have a good relationship with the Heavenly God Sword sect and the War God Saber sect. In fact, none of the three major sects in the South Horizon region had a good relationship. Dao Wumeng, do you want to try and see if you can reach the top of the 5 Fingers of Enlightenment Mountain? Wan smiled seductively. I can try, Dao Wumeng said. After all, he was a saint and one of the 10 princes. He would not be so easily attracted by Wan's beauty. Witch, how dare you show yourself? A cold and charming voice rang out again. In the distant sky, a beautiful figure in white flew over like a fairy. Her black hair danced in the wind, and her jade-like face was cold and beautiful. At that moment, she was looking at Wan, with anger in her beautiful eyes. It was Yi Tsangyue of the Ethereal Sword Pavilion. It's Fairy Tsangyue. The surrounding prodigies cast their gazes over again with burning desire in their eyes. Yi Tsangyue was famous for her beauty in the South Horizon region. She was a fairy that many people dreamed of. However, they did not know that the fairy in their hearts was no longer a virgin. Die! Yi Tsangyue directly stabbed her sword at Wan. Sister Tsangyu, why are you so angry? Who provoked you this time? Ever since the incident in the Mo Luo dynasty, your temper has been getting worse and worse. Wan moved to the side to avoid the attack. She smiled and teased Tsangyu. This undoubtedly hit Yi Tsangyue's sore spot. Her pretty face was covered with a layer of frost, and she was about to attack again. At that moment, a voice suddenly sounded from afar. Yi Tsangyue, why are you so angry? Hearing this voice, Yi Tsangyue's movements suddenly stiffened, and her face turned slightly pale. In the distance, 3 figures appeared at the same time. The leader was a white-haired youth who exuded a powerful demonic aura. His face was devilishly handsome, like a demon king. It was Duguchilmo. Chapter 1270. Duguchilmo's white hair fluttered in the wind, making him look devilishly handsome. As soon as he appeared, a powerful aura seemed to envelop the entire place. He was like the eye of a storm, making people feel suffocated wherever he went. Princess Luo Ho and Chen Qingxiao stood beside Duguchilmo. Looking at Chen Qingxiao's expressionless eyes, all the surrounding sky prides were filled with fear. Hearing about it was one thing, but seeing it with their own eyes was another. The rumors are true. Duguchilmo really did use a special method to subdue Chen Qingxiao. TSK, how bold of him, isn't he afraid of Huang Qianqiu's wrath? After all, Huang Qianqiu is also a member of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion. How could he allow someone from his own sect to be subdued by a genius from a dynasty? That's probably because Huang Qianqiu doesn't have time to deal with him for now. If he really does, Duguchilmo won't have a good time. I don't agree. Duguchilmo is too powerful. He's not a pushover. Duguchilmo's arrival undoubtedly attracted everyone's attention. If there was anyone in the entire Sacred Emperor world who was as famous as Yi Guqin, it would be Duguchilmo. However, when Guzun's somewhat numb and dull eyes landed on Duguchilmo, a strange light suddenly flashed in his eyes. Guzun's expression was strange. It was because Duguchilmo's appearance reminded him of someone. Someone who had been dead for a long time and was also his destined opponent. However, after taking a deep look at Duguchilmo, Guzun shook his head inwardly. Duguchilmo's eyes and brows were somewhat similar to that person's. However, the difference in temperament was too great. They were not the same person. Yi Tsangyue couldn't calm down when she saw Duguchilmo arrive. Any other girl wouldn't be able to calm down when they saw a man who had taken their virginity. On the other side, Wan looked at Yi Tsangyue and then at Duguchilmo. She blinked and said, Sister Tsangyue, I once joked that you and Dugu Chilma would become the fairy and the demon king. Is it true? Shut up. Yi Tsangyue bit her lips. Coldness, conflict, and complexity flashed in her eyes. She didn't know how to face Dugu Chilma Chilma. Dugu Chilma, Chilma Chilma. Chilma 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 was a demon king. Women weren't particularly important to him. The only reason for his existence was to become Yi Gu Chen's strongest trump card. Chilma, Chilma Chilma Chio, Chilma, Chio Chilma Chilma. Chilma, you and Yi Tsangyue. Princess Luo Ho had a complicated expression when she heard this. It's none of your business, Dugu Chilma said calmly. Princess Luo Chilma nodded and didn't say anything. However, the surrounding geniuses were so envious that their eyes almost turned red when they saw this scene. Dugu Chilma is really capable to be able to train such an arrogant and cold woman like Princess Luo Chilma to be so obedient, many prodigies said enviously. Yi Tsangyue didn't look at Dugu Chilma anymore. She didn't want to talk to him. The only thing that puzzled her was the change in the immortal divine embryo in her body. A sword embryo had been born from her invincible divine embryo. She guessed that this should be the Khanate sword embryo. However, Dugu Chilma didn't have a Khanate sword embryo. Then why did the immortal divine embryo in her body give birth to a Khanate sword embryo? Although she had her doubts, Yi Tsangyue obviously wouldn't lower herself to ask Dugu Chilma. At that moment, light surged on the 5 fingers Tao Enlightenment Mountain. Spirit chi spewed out. The 5 mountains were like the 5 fingers of a human, vast and magnificent. The 5 fingers Tao Enlightenment Mountain is about to open. All the prodigies were rubbing their fists and rubbing their palms, ready to attempt to climb the 5 fingers Tao Enlightenment Mountain. At this moment, a figure flashed through the air and appeared in the distance like a bolt of lightning. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his face was covered by a ghostly mask. He was tall and slender. It was Yi Gu Chen. That's Jian Kuei from the Sword Dynasty. He's here. When some people saw Yi Gu Chen, their eyes narrowed and they shouted out loud. Jian Kuei, he really appeared. TSK, this is going to be interesting. The top prodigies of the 4 dynasties are all gathered here. Everyone was stunned at first, then they burst into an uproar. Who was the most famous person in the Sacred Emperor world? It was undoubtedly Yi Gu Chen. As one of the only 2 prodigies in the dynasties who dared to attack the prodigies of the overlord forces, Yi Gu Chen's prestige was unquestionable. The first prodigy to attack the overlord forces was naturally Dugu Chilma. Now, the top prodigies of the 4 dynasties were all gathered here. Jian Kuei from the Sword Dynasty, Yi Gu Chen. Dugu Chilma from the Muro Dynasty, first on the blood ranking, white-haired sword demon. Zhao Shinkong from the War God Dynasty, little war god. Zhang Sun Aojue from the Tyrant Sword Dynasty, first on the sword ranking, 3 swords sect. Everyone was looking forward to the intense sparks that would fly between the 4 of them. Jian Kuei, Dugu Wubai, you've finally appeared. Zhao Shinkong's gaze immediately locked onto Yi Gu Chen the moment he appeared. An exuberant fighting spirit rose up like a raging fire. Yi Gu Chen had killed Zhao Weihuang and the other prodigies of the War God Dynasty, so Zhao Shinkong naturally couldn't ignore it. He also knew that he would eventually have to fight Yi Gu Chen. Big brother. Zhao Xiaodi frowned. In the end, the scene that she didn't want to see had happened. At the same time, Zhang Sun Aojue was also bursting with battle intent. After all, Yi Gu Chen had also killed Feng Shalai, Jin Taiji, and the others from the domineering Blade Dynasty. Jian Kuei, you've finally appeared. It's time to settle the score with Feng Shalai and the others. Zhang Sun Aojue said coldly. The 3 sabers on his back buzzed and vibrated. Seeing Zhao Shinkong and Zhang Sun Aojue's attitude. Under the mask, Yi Gu Chen's expression was extremely calm. Zhao Shinkong and Zhang Sun Aojue weren't any weaker than the prodigies of the overlord forces. However, Yi Gu Chen wasn't a pushover either. When Princess Luoho saw Yiguchen's arrival, her ash-gray eyes immediately shot out a sharp gaze. Jinkue, you're finally here. This time, with Chiu-mo here, the matter of the sacred dynasty's inheritance isn't over yet. Princess Luoho's seductive red lips curled into a victorious smile. Dugu Chiu-mo seemed to be her greatest reliance. Yiguchen secretly shook his head. If Princess Luoho knew the truth, what kind of expression would she have? However, at this moment, Yiguchen's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He felt someone's gaze on him. He followed the gaze and his heart skipped a beat. Itsang-yue. Chapter 1271. Yiguchen's heart stirred because he sensed that there was something in Itsang-yue's body that resonated with his aura. Could it be the immortal divine embryo? Yiguchen was secretly surprised. Ever since Dugu Chioma and Itsang-yue had done that ridiculous thing. For some reason, his Khanate sword embryo seemed to have been nourished by the power of the immortal divine embryo and gradually transformed into the Khanate indestructible sword embryo. Could it be because Dugu Chioma is my doppelganger and he is equivalent to a bridge and a medium that connects my energy with Itsang-yue's? Is that why the Khanate sword embryo and the immortal divine embryo can obtain each other's power? Yiguchen guessed that this was very likely. Moreover, Dugu Chioma was his doppelganger and was destined to merge with him one day. Therefore, it was not impossible to treat Dugu Chioma as Yiguchen's other side. Therefore, this was the most reasonable guess. While Yiguchen's heart stirred, Itsang-yue also sensed that strange feeling. Why do I have that kind of feeling towards Jinkue? Itsang-yue was equally puzzled. She thought that she and Jinkue were complete strangers and had nothing to do with each other. Apart from Itsang-yue, Guzun's gaze also fell on Yiguchen. His brows were tightly furrowed. I've never seen him before, but why do I feel like I've seen him before? Guzun muttered to himself intermittently. As the saying went, the person who understood you the most was not your friend, but your enemy. Guzun had once fought Yiguchen in a battle of the sword and saber. It was not strange for him to feel this way. Guzun has become stronger again. Yiguchen muttered to himself. Were he and Guzun mortal enemies? Yes. Even the death of Guzun's master, Yubufan, was indirectly related to Yiguchen. However, Guzun was also Yiguchen's most respected rival. He wasn't like Gu Xiaoyang, Huang Qianqiu, or Di Haotian, who only had hatred for him. Now is not the time to reveal my true identity. But in the future, I will definitely settle this with you. There should also be a conclusion to the sword and saber duel, Yiguchen muttered to himself. Now, Yiguchen's arrival caused the atmosphere to become strange. Princess Luoho tugged on Dugu Chioma's arm and said, Chioma, when the time comes, you have to help me teach this Jinkue a lesson. Dugu Chioma said indifferently, the opportunity of the 5 fingers of Tao Enlightenment Mountain is the most important. Let's talk about it later. As Yiguchen's avatar, how could he possibly attack the main body? Of course, to be honest, Dugu Chioma was also very curious about who was stronger between him and the Prime Sovereign. However, now was clearly not the time to spar, because Zhao Shinkong, Zhang Sun Aojue, and the others were still here. They were a variable. At this moment, Zhao Shinkong and Zhang Sun Aojue's fighting spirit soared, as if they were about to attack Yiguchen. Meanwhile, the entire 5 fingers of Tao Comprehension Mountain shuddered all of a sudden, as if a boundless aura was being emitted from it. The 5 fingers Tao Comprehension Mountain is open. We can climb up. Some of the geniuses cried out in surprise. The 5 mountains in front of him were filled with multicolored light and natural Taoist rhymes. On each mountain, there were 999 steps. Countless complex runes appeared in the void, as if the gods and Buddhas were chanting. What a dense Tao aura! Rumor has it that this 5 fingers Tao Enlightenment Mountain was formed from the 5 fingers of this immortal Saint Emperor. How shocking! Yiguchen thought to himself. However, when he thought about how the entire sacred emperor world was a small world derived from the immortal saint emperor's body, 5 fingers turning into 5 mountains didn't seem to be something to be surprised about. We can set out now. Dao Wumeng laughed heartily as he chose a mountain and stepped onto it. Gu Zun's eyes flashed as he chose another peak. The effect of climbing all 5 mountains was the same. Of course, if they chose to climb the same mountain, there would definitely be a winner. Waner also smiled charmingly as she chose a mountain. Yi Tsangyue also chose the same mountain as Waner. Hee, Sister Tsangyue, why are you following me? Waner giggled. Yi Tsangyue did not reply, her face as cold as ice. In fact, she also wanted to use the Tao Comprehension Mountain to compete with Waner on a different level. Dugu's eyes flashed as he also chose a mountain. Princess Luo Ho naturally followed. As for the enslaved Chen Qingshao, Dugu did not let him climb Tao Comprehension Mountain. With these people leading the way, the other geniuses also swarmed up Tao Comprehension Mountain. Zhao Shinkong and Zhang Sun Aojue, who were full of fighting spirit, also suppressed their fighting spirit. After all, the opportunity was the most important thing right now. Yi Guqin chose the Tao Comprehension Mountain in the middle and separated himself from the other geniuses. He did not want to be disturbed while he was comprehending the Tao. However, after seeing Yi Guqin choose the middle mountain, Zhang Sun Aojue's eyes flashed. Zhang Sun Aojue's eyes flashed and he also chose this mountain peak. Zhao Shinkong also chose the same mountain without hesitation. Interesting. Jinkui, Zhao Shinkong, and Zhang Sun Aojue all chose the same mountain. It seems like they will have a competition later. I wonder who will go further in the end. The higher you climb, the more important it is, not just cultivation level. Comprehension is the most important, some people discussed. Zhao Xiaodi helplessly rubbed her forehead and could only follow. All the geniuses began to climb Tao Comprehension Mountain. Yi Guqin immediately felt it when he stepped onto the first step. He was wrapped in Tao rhymes, and his thoughts became extremely clear and flexible. Yi Guqin also felt like he could see through the essence of the world. The higher he climbed, the stronger the effect. It was like a dusty mirror being polished. In such a state, no matter what cultivation technique or martial art he comprehended, he would get twice the result with half the effort. As expected of the opportunity left behind by the sage emperor. This Tao rhyme is too strong. Yi Guqin was overjoyed. This Tao rhyme was much better than the Tao comprehension treasures Yi Guqin had experienced in the past. Even the Sword Dynasty's Sword Tomb, Ancient Sword Tomb, and other secret realms were not as good as the 5 fingers of Tao Comprehension Mountain. But if I think about it carefully, a saint already has a great understanding of the power of laws. How profound would a saint emperor's understanding of laws and rules be? It's not surprising that he could have such a Tao aura. Yi Guqin finally understood. The immortal sage emperor's understanding of laws had reached an unimaginable level. Otherwise, he would not have been able to create a small world in his body. Therefore, although the 5 fingers of Tao Comprehension Mountain was only the 5 fingers left behind by the immortal sage emperor, but the Tao Comprehension treasures it contained were also unimaginable. This Tao Comprehension Mountain is really a treasure ground. It might really allow me to comprehend the all-creation sword Tao, ultimate sword domain, and other techniques. Yi Guqin was looking forward to what he would gain. Chapter 1272. Now that the 5 fingers of Tao Enlightenment Mountain had opened, all the prodigies swarmed up the 5 peaks. Every mountain peak had 999 steps. Of course, not everyone could reach the top of the mountain. Because in order to reach the top, one had to have a high level of comprehension. After all, the fortuitous opportunity left behind by the immortal Saint Emperor was not something that any ordinary person could obtain. At this moment, if one looked at the peaks of the 5 peaks, they would see. At the peak of each peak, there was a golden praying mat floating in the air. Every single one of the sky prides looked at the praying mat with fervent gazes. Rumor has it that sitting on the praying mat will allow one to obtain shocking enlightenment. However, it is also extremely difficult. Rumor has it that only prodigies at the level of 1 emperor and 4 sovereigns are qualified to sit on the golden praying mat. Although all the prodigies were envious of the praying mat, they also knew that it was not something they could hope for. It was too difficult to reach the peak of Tao Enlightenment Mountain and sit on the praying mat. Yi Guqin was climbing the Enlightenment Mountain in the middle. 30 steps. 50 steps. 100 steps. When he reached the 100th step, Yi Guqin felt that the pressure had doubled. However, to Yi Guqin, it did not affect him much. He continued to climb at a constant speed. Zhao Shinkong and Zhang Sun Aojue seemed to be secretly competing with Yi Guqin. Their speed did not fall behind, and they were even faster than Yi Guqin. On this Tao Enlightenment Mountain, Zhao Shinkong and Zhang Sun Aojue were at the front. Then it was Yi Guqin. Zhao Xiaodi also followed closely behind. Then it was the other prodigies climbing the mountain. However, after the 100th step, some of the weaker prodigies could not withstand the pressure and could only stop at the 100th step to comprehend the Tao. The other 4 Tao Enlightenment Mountains were in a similar situation. Only those with true strength and comprehension would be able to continue climbing up the mountain. Soon, Yi Guqin broke through the 200th step. Then it was the 300th step. The 400th step. By the time they reached the 500th level, the number of sky prides who continued to climb was very few. This was because the pressure of the 500th level was not something that ordinary sky prides could withstand. If one's comprehension ability and strength were not up to par, it would be difficult for them to ascend. This Saint Emperor's test is not simple. Yi Guqin's forehead was also dripping with sweat. That pressure was like a mountain pressing down on his head. However, at this point, Yi Guqin felt that his mind was clear. The complicated sword moves in his mind seemed to have been broken down into simple combinations. If it has such an effect on the 500th floor, what will happen on the 900th floor? What will happen if I sit cross-legged on the golden praying mat? Yi Guqin was filled with anticipation. As for the other peaks, Dugu, Chuma, and Princess Luoho had also broken through the 500th level. Yi Cangyue and Wan'er were secretly competing with each other as they both reached the 500th floor. Dao Wumeng and Gu Zun didn't fall behind either. As time passed, Yi Guqin stepped onto the 700th step. Those who were able to reach this place were all heroes among men, geniuses among geniuses. The pressure here is several times stronger than before. Yi Guqin panted slightly, also feeling a wave of pressure. Zhao Shinkong and Zhang Sun Aojue, who had been walking at the front, also slowed down. Although Yi Guqin was also under pressure, his speed was maintained at a constant level. This caused the geniuses who had been stuck at the first few hundred levels to stare with their mouths agape. This is truly shocking. The Sword Chief's speed hasn't decreased at all from the beginning. Now I really have a whole new level of respect for Jiankuei. No wonder he's the top sky pride of the Sword Dynasty. Do you guys think Jiankuei can reach the top and sit on the golden praying mat? Isn't that a little too exaggerated? Jiankuei's performance is indeed impressive, but it's probably not enough to reach the level of 1 emperor and 4 sovereigns. Many sky prides were paying attention to Yi Guqin's actions. They were very curious if Yi Guqin could create another miracle. Why, does Jiankuei actually have such ability? Yi Guqin's speed had unknowingly surpassed Zhao Shinkong and Zhang Sun Aojue's. At this moment, Zhang Sun Aojue was looking at Yi Guqin's back. His expression did not look good. Only now did he understand how troublesome Yi Guqin was. He already has such ability now. If he can really reach the top and sit on the praying mat, his strength will be even greater. Zhang Sun Aojue's expression was uncertain. He had originally been very confident in his own strength and that he could deal with Yi Guqin. But now, after seeing Yi Guqin's performance, his firm confidence wavered a little. Zhao Shinkong also furrowed his brows, but the battle intent in his eyes grew even stronger. As time passed, Yi Guqin finally reached the 900th step. He was also the first person to reach the 900th step on this mountain. On the other mountains, Duguqioma also reached the 900th step at about the same time. In terms of talent, Duguqioma, who had inherited the talent of the Dark World's Soul Eater royal family, was not much weaker than Yiguchen. On the other three mountains, Yi Cangyue, Wan, Dao Wumeng, Gu Zun and the others also reached the 900th step. The moment Yiguchen stepped on the 900th step, he felt a tremendous pressure that could topple mountains and overturn seas. In front of his eyes, it was as if a majestic figure had appeared. It was a figure with his back to all life, with the sun, moon, and stars above his head, and his feet stepping on all four extremes. He did not emit any aura. Yiguchen only glanced at him and felt his chest tighten, as if his entire body was about to be crushed. Yiguchen directly circulated his ancient god power to resist the pressure. But he also felt his chest tighten and his breathing become short. Every step was more difficult than the previous 900 steps combined. How terrifying! Is this the immortal Saint Emperor? An immortal existence that has given birth to a world in his body. Yiguchen took a deep breath. It was obvious that the imposing figure was just a faint imprint of the Saint Emperor on the 5 fingers of Tao Enlightenment Mountain. But even if it was just an imprint, it made him feel as if he could not breathe. From this, it could be seen how powerful the immortal Saint Emperor was. The last person who gave me such an unfathomable feeling was the 8th generation sword master, Yi Tianqing, Yiguchen thought. But from the looks of it, the 900th step should be a watershed. Only those who have reached the 900th step are qualified to challenge the summit and sit on the golden praying mat, Yiguchen thought. But now, Yiguchen found it difficult to continue. He needed to digest and adapt to the pressure. Right, the Taoist rhyme of the 900th step is already extremely rich. I can adapt and comprehend the Tao at the same time, Yiguchen thought. Without hesitation, he took out a few enlightenment leaves and put them in his mouth to help him comprehend the Tao. Behind him, Zhangsun Aojue and Zhao Shinkong also followed. Zhangsun Aojue's expression changed when he saw Yiguchen close his eyes to comprehend the Tao. Chapter 1273. Many prodigies were not surprised to see Yiguchen sitting cross-legged on the 900th step. As expected, Jinkuei's limit should be the 900th step, right? That's impressive enough. It's enough to prove that Jinkuei's comprehension and strength are comparable to those Overlord Force's prodigies. Seeing Yiguchen sitting cross-legged on the spot, the prodigies below did not mock him. Instead, they admired him. It was already beyond their expectations for a dynasty's prodigy to be able to pass the 900th step. At that moment, Yiguchen closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the spot, beginning to comprehend. He first tried to comprehend the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique. He wanted to comprehend the true essence of the 8 extremities reincarnation. One sword move after another was reflected and manifested in his mind. If he could truly comprehend the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique, Yiguchen might be able to use this opportunity to comprehend the reincarnation sword technique. The reincarnation sword technique was the same as the all-creation sword technique. It was a powerful creation sword technique. Just as Yiguchen started to comprehend, behind him, Zhangsun Aojue's expression changed. To be honest, Zhangsun Aojue also knew that even if he could reach the 900th step, it would be difficult for him to advance any further. Since that was the case, Zhangsun Aojue would definitely not allow Yiguchen to comprehend peacefully. Otherwise, when Yiguchen's strength improved again, he would not be able to deal with him. At that thought, a look of determination flashed across Zhangsun Aojue's eyes. He stomped one foot, and one of the 3 sabers on his back flew into the air. Slash! Zhangsun Aojue pointed his finger, and the blade that rose into the air slashed towards Yiguchen, who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. This scene was too sudden, and everyone was unable to react for a moment. Yiguchen, who was comprehending with his eyes closed, suddenly felt a chill on his back. A sharp saber aura had locked onto him. And this also directly disrupted Yiguchen's enlightenment, causing his chest to shake, and his qi and blood to churn slightly. Boom! At that critical moment, Yiguchen abruptly opened his eyes and soared into the air. The blade also smashed into the ground where Yiguchen had been sitting cross-legged a moment ago. It's you. Zhangsun Aojue. Yiguchen's eyes shot out an extremely cold light. As the saying goes, cutting off one's opportunity is like killing one's parents. Yiguchen was currently comprehending the fated chance of comprehending Tao, but in the end, he was forcefully interrupted by Zhangsun Aojue, so he even suffered some minor injuries. Yiguchen was not a narrow-minded person. However, this kind of behavior had completely enraged him. Jinkue, don't look at me like that. You and I are enemies. I can't just watch you succeed in comprehending the Tao. Zhangsun Aojue's expression did not change at all, as if it was a matter of course. With a wave of his hand, the blade flew back into his hand. Seeing Zhangsun Aojue suddenly make a move, all the geniuses present were shocked. Generally speaking, on Tao Comprehension Mountain, all the geniuses had a tacit understanding in their hearts and would not easily make a move. Because no one wanted to give up such a rare opportunity to comprehend the Tao. However, even if Zhangsun Aojue did not comprehend the Tao himself, he still had to interfere with Yiguchen's comprehension. That was a little immoral. Even Zhao Shinkong's brows furrowed slightly. To be honest, he also looked down on Zhangsun Aojue's actions. However, Yiguchen was indeed his opponent, so Zhao Shinkong could only watch from the sidelines. Ha! Do you really think you can stop me from obtaining the opportunity of Tao Comprehension Mountain? Yiguchen suddenly laughed. If it's about killing you, I am indeed not completely confident. However, if it's just stopping you from obtaining the opportunity of Tao Comprehension Mountain, I believe I can still do it, Zhangsun Aojue said calmly. That expression of his seemed to be asking for a beating. Ha ha. Yiguchen laughed again and continued. What I mean is, do you have the life to stop me? As soon as Yiguchen finished speaking, he raised his hand. A flash of lightning surged out, and the 9-dragon thunder prison sword landed in his hand. Without hesitation, Yiguchen's body moved like lightning. He used the divine movement secret technique and stabbed towards Zhangsun Aojue with his sword. Yiguchen had actually directly attacked Zhangsun Aojue. That's exactly what I wanted. Zhangsun Aojue smiled when he saw that his plan had succeeded. As long as he delayed Yiguchen and prevented him from obtaining the opportunity to comprehend the Tao, once Tao Comprehension Mountain closed, Yiguchen would naturally lose this opportunity. Zhangsun Aojue was risking his own inability to comprehend the Tao to stop Yiguchen from obtaining the opportunity. Do you think you can kill me before Tao Comprehension Mountain closes? Zhangsun Aojue thought it was very funny. No matter what, he was the #1 on the sword leaderboard in the Tyrant Sword Dynasty. He was someone who could compete with the geniuses of the overlords. If Yiguchen wanted to kill him, it was definitely a fantasy. Yiguchen did not say a word. Zhangsun Aojue's actions had already sentenced him to death. He swung his sword, and the mighty sword radiance turned into a blazing torrent that charged towards Zhangsun Aojue. It was the third ultimate sage sword, Starry Sun Flowing Fire. Good timing. I want to see if I, the #1 on the sword leaderboard, or if you, the sword dynasty's Jinkue, are stronger. Although Zhangsun Aojue's methods were somewhat despicable, his strength was still there. He swung his sword, and it turned into a dazzling sword aura that directly split the torrent. A huge battle immediately erupted between the two of them. Looking at Yiguchen and Zhangsun Aojue, who were engaged in a battle without hesitation, the surrounding geniuses were all dumbfounded. Fighting on Tao Comprehension Mountain was really a waste of resources. The other geniuses of Tao Comprehension Mountain were also attracted by the shockwaves from the battle. Duguqiuma, who had already reached the 900th level, saw the situation and his face turned cold. How dare he provoke me, Duguqiuma continued climbing. He believed that Yiguchen could resolve this matter. Now, Jinkue might not even be able to comprehend the Tao, let alone continue to break through. Yeah, this Zhangsun Aojue is too ruthless. He cut off other people's opportunities, and also his own. Many of the geniuses were discussing. They believed that with Zhang Sun Aojue there, Yi Guqin would not have the chance to comprehend the Tao. On the other side, a huge battle had erupted. Zhang Sun Aojue was only using one sword, but the sword aura was ferocious and fierce. Eagle sword technique, wings in the wind. Zhang Sun Aojue's figure rose into the air, and he spread his arms like an eagle spreading its wings. He was accumulating power. Then, his figure swooped down like an arrow, and his sword cut through the air, bringing with it a powerful and sharp air current. Eagle sword technique, eagle soars the sky. The sword slashed down like an eagle pouncing on a rabbit. When Yi Guqin saw this, he held the 9-dragon thunder prison and raised his sword. The Qian Yang absolute sword and Kun Yu absolute sword were used at the same time. The combined Qian Kun annihilation collided with Zhang Sun Aojue. In an instant, the sword aura and saber wind wreaked havoc. Yi Guqin directly unleashed the seamless divine palace's true qi that was 10 times more vigorous. The sword aura exploded, and the shockwaves were extremely powerful. With a loud boom, it was as if the heavens and earth were splitting apart. Zhang Sun Aojue's figure was sent flying like a cannonball. Chapter 1274. Looking at Zhang Sun Aojue, who had been sent flying, the prodigies around Tao Comprehension Mountain were all stunned. They knew that Yi Guqin was very strong after his reappearance, but they did not expect him to be this strong. Even Zhang Sun Aojue was so easily suppressed. Zhang Sun Aojue's eyes were also filled with shock. That extremely strong rebounding force caused the blood in his chest to churn. Your strength? No, your spiritual abode. Zhang Sun Aojue also reacted. He could feel that Yi Guqin's cultivation was definitely not as high as his, but his true energy had firmly suppressed him. There was only one reason for this, and that was that Yi Guqin's spiritual abode was extraordinary. However, Zhang Sun Aojue also had a flawless spiritual abode. Then, there was only one conclusion: Yi Guqin had cultivated a flawless spiritual abode. How is this possible? A flawless spiritual abode. Even some overlord-level prodigies might not be able to successfully transform it. How can he? Zhang Sun Aojue's expression became extremely serious. If he still looked down on Yi Guqin now, then he would really be a fool. Crouching eagle saber technique, evil eagle against the sky. Zhang Sun Aojue once again used his ultimate technique. His body rose into the air, and the true energy around him flowed, pouring into the blade. Vaguely, the biting cold and surging saber aura seemed to condense into the shadow of an evil eagle spreading its wings, slashing towards Yi Guqin. Provoking me is your greatest folly. Yi Guqin's expression was cold. 9-colored profound lightning surged out from his body, wrapping around the 9-dragon lightning prison sword. He swung his sword, and the sword light illuminated the sky. Lightning flashed as he received the power of the heavenly lightning. It was the divine sword lightning controlling art, heavenly lightning summoning. The blade was vast and mighty, and the lightning surged. It was as if 100,000 stars had exploded. The powerful sword aura collided with Zhang Sun Aojue's blade. Heaven and earth shook, setting off shockwaves. Fortunately, they were fighting on Tao Comprehension Mountain. As the immortal Saint Emperor's finger bone had transformed into Tao Comprehension Mountain, it was abnormally sturdy and could easily withstand the shockwaves of the battle. Otherwise, if it were any other ordinary mountain, it would have shattered in an instant. In the fierce collision, Zhang Sun Aojue's saber chi surged. His saber, accompanied by the shadow of an evil eagle, seemed to tear through the lightning as it slashed towards Yi Guqin's head. Not good. Everyone around raised their guard. Zhang Sun Aojue was indeed worthy of being the number 1 on the tyrannical Saber dynasty's saber ranking. That kind of saber chi was too cold and surging. It could even tear apart lightning. Heh! Yi Guqin was incomparably calm. He circulated his divine dwelling true chi and infused it into the 9-dragon thunder prison. In an instant, a heaven-shaking dragon roar sounded. A thunder dragon's soul that looked like it was formed by interweaving lightning appeared on the sword blade. It opened its mouth and bit at the evil eagle's shadow. In a split second, the sky shook as the dragon's soul and the vicious eagle fought. Break! Yi Gu-chen's words were filled with a murderous aura, as if he was a powerful army. The dragon's soul shook violently as it roared in the heavens. It directly opened its mouth and tore apart the evil eagle's illusory figure, causing it to be destroyed. Zhang Sun Aojue's blade technique was also broken at the same time. Boom! The thunder dragon's soul swung its tail and heavily attacked Zhang Sun Aojue. Seeing this, Zhang Sun Aojue raised the long saber in his hand. His true qi burst forth and blocked the attack. However, the strong vibrating power and lightning power caused his arms to feel a little numb. At this time, Yi Gu-chen performed the first level of the divine movement secret skill, chasing lightning, at lightning speed. His feet seemed to be stepping on lightning. It was as if he had teleported and appeared in front of Zhang Sun Aojue. This speed. Zhang Sun Aojue's eyes were filled with shock again. Without truly fighting with Yi Gu-chen, he would never know how many trump cards and techniques he had. Killing God, killing immortal, crying immortal. Yi Gu-chen struck out with his sword. As the sword radiance shone, it was as if the illusory figure of an immortal had appeared and was crying in grief. Zhang Sun Aojue gritted his teeth and shouted, "Second blade, unsheath." As Zhang Sun Aojue's voice sounded, the second blade behind him was unsheathed. It rose into the air and landed in his hands. Now, Zhang Sun Aojue was wielding two blades with both hands. This scene caused the surrounding sky prides to be shocked beyond words. Zhang Sun Aojue actually used two blades. You have to know that he usually only uses one blade in his normal battles. Yeah, Zhang Sun Aojue is famous for his three-blade stream. There are not many people who can force him to use his second blade. Looks like Zhang Sun Aojue also feels the pressure and has no choice but to use two blades. Discussions broke out all around. Zhao Shinkong, who was watching the battle not far away, had a tense expression. As the saying went, seeing is believing. Without truly seeing Yi Gu-chen's strength, one would not understand how terrifying and difficult of an opponent he was. Zhao Xiaodi also bit her lips and said, "Brother, you also saw Dugu Wubai's strength. Even Zhang Sun Aojue has to use two blades. Why don't we just forget about it?" Zhao Xiaodi really did not want a conflict between Zhao Shinkong and Yi Gu-chen. No matter how strong this Dugu Wubai is, this battle is unavoidable. But now, I can estimate his strength. If even Zhang Sun Aojue can't suppress him, then there's no need to be too afraid, Zhao Shinkong said after some thought. Seeing that Zhao Shinkong was so stubborn, Zhao Xiaodi wrinkled her sparkling face helplessly. In the center of the battle, Zhang Sun Aojue said coldly, "Jinkui, you can be proud of yourself for forcing me to use two blades." Whirlwind blade technique, sweeping leaves. Zhang Sun Aojue spun his blades with both hands. The blade aura seemed to have turned into a storm as it clashed with Yi Gu-chen's immortal god's weep. In the intense collision, some of the blade aura brushed past Yi Gu-chen's body, and some wounds appeared. Zhang Sun Aojue was naturally injured as well. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. But then, Zhang Sun Aojue's attacks became even more ferocious. After all, the speed of the dual blade technique was like lightning. Whirlwind blade technique, sandstorm transformation. The fierce and dense blade aura spread out like a sandstorm, bursting with shocking power. The dual blade technique is indeed fast. But do you think you're the only one who knows it? Seeing Zhang Sun Aojue's formation, Yi Gu-chen's lips curled into a faint smile. Don't forget, Yi Gu-chen still had one more ultimate move. That was the dual blade technique. Yi Gu-chen held his sword in one hand while the other clenched in the air. Endless true qi gathered and condensed into a true qi longsword. Kill! Yi Gu-chen used the dual blade technique that he had not used in a long time. He used the three ultimate holy swords in one hand and the godly sword lightning controlling technique in the other. The vigorous fluctuations were not any weaker than Zhang Sun Aojue's dual blade technique. How is this possible? Countless sky prides cried out in surprise. Dual blade technique was not something that could be mastered by just having hands. It required countless years of hard work and training. Not to mention using an emperor-level sword technique with both hands at the same time. That was something that even ordinary dual-blade grandmasters could not do. As for Zhang Sun Aojue, he looked like he was in a daze. Chapter 1275. Zhang Sun Aojue felt as if he had seen a ghost. His dual-blade technique was something he had painstakingly practiced since he was young. As for the three-blade technique, he had practiced it for an even longer time. But even now, Zhang Sun Aojue found it difficult to use different blade techniques with both hands. It felt as if he was about to be torn apart. But Yi Guqin was different. He used to be the Dugu sword demon. He lived alone on the peak and could only be his own opponent. He practiced the left-right intercombat technique. That was why he was able to master the dual blade technique. At this moment, Yi Guqin's dual blade technique was enhanced by two emperor-class sword techniques. Its power was off the charts. Zhang Sun Aojue was dumbfounded. He could not help but feel jealous. I don't believe that you can defeat me. Zhang Sun Aojue dared not. He roared and attacked. Whirlwind blade technique, 1,000 miles of flames. Zhang Sun Aojue's blade was as fast as the wind and as explosive as fire. It was as if he wanted to vent all the anger and unwillingness in his heart. In the face of this move, Yi Guqin looked calm. His dual blade technique was definitely not weaker than Zhang Sun Aojue's dual blade technique. It was even stronger. Clang! 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 The sound of swords clashing rang out continuously. A series of sparks flew. Because both of them used dual blades and dual swords, the frequency of their attacks was exceptionally high. The swift saber light and sword shadows were so dazzling that it almost blinded people's eyes, causing them to be unable to see clearly. I didn't expect Jin Kuei to be proficient in dual blade techniques. Oh my god, how many trump cards does he have? Some of the sky prides could not calm down. Ordinary sky prides only had 1 or 2 trump cards. But Yi Guqin seemed to have endless trump cards. Most importantly, every single one of his trump cards was enough to amaze people. On the other peaks, although the other sky prides were also trying their best to climb, the battle between Yi Guqin and Zhang Sun Aojue had attracted some of their attention. On a Dao Enlightenment mountain, Gu Zun, who was climbing, was watching the battle between the two. The more he watched, the more a rare dark light appeared in Gu Zun's numb eyes. Why does it feel more and more familiar? Gu Zun muttered hoarsely. The more Gu Zun watched the battle, the more he felt that the masked figure seemed to overlap with a certain figure in his memory. No, impossible, it can't be him. He's already dead. Gu Zun muttered. Yi Guqin had taken the 9 deaths without regrets pill in front of countless people on the Tianhuang plains. Therefore, it couldn't be him. To be able to fight Zhang Sun Aojue to this extent, interesting. On another enlightenment mountain, Dao Wuming was also paying attention. Actually, if nothing unexpected happened, Zhang Sun Aojue definitely had the qualifications to join the Battle God Saber sect. However, the prerequisite was that he could survive the duel with Yi Guqin. On the other hand, Dugu wasn't worried about Yi Guqin's safety at all. He was very clear about the true strength of the main body. Princess Luoho's beautiful face had a grave expression. He's become stronger again, and he hasn't revealed his true trump card yet. Princess Luoho's tone was grave. She had experienced Yi Guqin's ultimate sword domain. The power of the overlapping sword domains had shocked even a prodigy like Princess Luoho. Now, Princess Luoho was a little worried. If Dugu begged the demon to help, would he really be able to suppress Yi Guqin? All the prodigies watching the battle had different thoughts. And now, the battle had reached its climax. Bang! After another round of attacks, Zhang Sun Aojue was once again pushed back. Even the dual blade stream is difficult to suppress. Damn it! Zhang Sun Aojue cursed in his heart. At this moment, there was finally a trace of regret in his heart. If he had known that Yi Guqin was such a difficult person to deal with, he wouldn't have provoked him so easily. The three-blade stream is my trump card. I can't use it so easily, but I still have one more trump card. Zhang Sun Aojue muttered in his heart. He wasn't willing to reveal his final trump card. But other than that, Zhang Sun Aojue still had one more trump card. That was his innate divine power as a grade 7 prodigy. Boom! A blood-red blade chi suddenly surged out of Zhang Sun Aojue's body. His eyes blazed like red-hot steel balls. When this blood-red saber chi appeared, the surrounding atmosphere seemed to become murderous. Gloomy winds blew, and it was as if a tragic scene of blood flowing for hundreds of thousands of kilometers appeared. That's... Some of the prodigies widened their eyes. That should be Zhang Sun Aojue's innate divine power, blood blade chi. Some of the prodigies who knew a little about Zhang Sun Aojue said. Zhang Sun Aojue was the number one on the domineering Saber dynasty's Saber leaderboard. Naturally, his talent wasn't bad. He was a grade 7 prodigy. And grade 7 prodigies all had their own unique innate divine power. And Zhang Sun Aojue's innate divine power was the blood blade chi that he was born with. This blade chi was extremely powerful, and it could be used on various saber techniques. To a certain extent, it was similar to Dugu's connate purple aura. However, the connate purple aura's main ability was to assist in cultivation. Its secondary ability was to attack. And Zhang Sun Aojue's blood blade chi was a pure offensive innate divine power. To be able to force me to use my innate divine power, Jiankui, you have indeed greatly exceeded my expectations. But the final result will not change. Zhang Sun Aojue's eyes were as red as blood, and a blood-red aura flowed around him. He slashed out with both sabers again and used another saber technique. Blood Fall Saber Technique, Blood Trampling Plum Blossom. Zhang Sun Aojue took a few steps, and with every step, the ground seemed to splatter with fresh blood. At the same time, his aura was also rising. The blood blade chi was used together with the blood fall saber technique, and its power increased exponentially. Feeling Zhang Sun Aojue's aura, Yi Guqin's eyes showed some interest. That's more like it. I don't need boring opponents. Not only was Yi Guqin not afraid, but his eyes were filled with a strong desire to battle. The stronger the opponent, the more interesting it would be. There was no meaning in suppressing the weak. 3 Ultimate Holy Sword, 3 moves combined, Moon Falling Star Sinking Great Yang Break. Yi Guqin's sword vibrated, and 3 sword radiances cut through the sky. They combined into a blazing sword radiance and collided with Zhang Sun Aojue. This attack was like 2 stars colliding. The blood blade chi tore through the sky, and the 3 ultimate sword radiance slashed through the sky. The shockwaves from the battle spread in all directions, and the entire Enlightenment Mountain seemed to tremble slightly. All the prodigies gathered their gazes. On one side was the Sword Dynasty's Jiankui, who had risen against the trend and could even kill an Overlord-level force. On the other side was the Tyrant Saber Dynasty's number 1 on the Saber ranking, the famous 3 Saber sex prodigy, Zhang Sun Aojue. In such an intense collision, who would gain the upper hand? To a certain extent, this could be said to be a battle between the Sword Dynasty and the Tyrant Saber Dynasty. Was the saber more ferocious, or was the sword sharper? Chapter 1276. Violent collisions erupted on Dao Comprehension Mountain. Amidst the violent collisions, the sound of metal colliding could be heard. Yi Guqin and Zhang Sun Aojue were madly clashing amidst the endless waves of qi. Their swords were like lightning, swift and fierce. Their blades were like raging flames, explosive and fierce. Both of their moves were extremely fast, leaving some wounds on each other's body from time to time. Blood Fall Blade Technique, Blood Rain Sky. Zhang Sun Aojue's blades slashed out more than 100 blades in just a few breaths of time. Each blade was fierce and unyielding, capable of instantly killing a divine dwelling heaven pride. At this moment, the hundreds of blades slashed out, intertwining into dense blade light. It was as if a rain of blood was pouring down, completely sealing off Ye Guqin's surroundings. Upon seeing this, Ye Guqin changed his sword move, branding a Li trigram rune in the air. Baji Reincarnation Sword Technique, Fire Extreme. The tip of Ye Guqin's sword broke the rune of the Li trigram. In an instant, a raging fire wrapped around the tip of the sword. With a strike, the blazing and dazzling sword radiance overturned all directions and collided with Zhang Sun Aojue's dense blood-colored saber radiance. Boom! 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 Continuous explosions sounded, and Zhang Sun Aojue's body was forced back. His chest shook, and a taste of blood gushed into his mouth. Ye Guqin was also affected by the recoil and suffered a little injury, but it wasn't a big problem for him. He once again used the divine movement secret art, and his figure pulled out an afterimage as he continued to attack. Baji Reincarnation Sword Technique, Water Extreme. Ye Guqin once again used the other sword moves. The power of each sword move was enough to make the divine dwelling heaven prides tremble in fear, making their hearts turn cold. Under such an attack, Zhang Sun Aojue was also repeatedly forced back. It wasn't that he wasn't strong, but that Ye Guqin was too strong. Although he was only at the 4th layer of the divine dwelling realm, almost no one could suppress him in terms of qi because of the leakless divine dwelling. In addition, Ye Guqin's own sword moves were also extremely powerful, so it naturally formed such a suppression. Again, Blood Fall Saber Technique, Calamity of Blood. Zhang Sun Aojue's eyes were completely red. He was unwilling to believe that Ye Guqin actually had the ability to suppress him to such an extent. He used the ultimate move of the Blood Fall Saber Technique. With a slash of the saber, the Bloodblade Saber Qi condensed into a 1,000-foot-long astral saber that ruthlessly slashed toward Ye Guqin. Regarding this move, Ye Guqin could not hold back. He also used a powerful sword move of the 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique. 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Art, Earth's Extremity. A rune of the Kun trigram appeared in the void. Ye Guqin slashed out with his sword, piercing through the runes. As the runes shattered, it was as if the earth itself was beginning to tremble. Earth's topography and Earth's topography, thick and virtuous bearing, unmoving and unwavering. This sword was ferocious and heavy. Boom! The collision of the two ultimate moves was like a clap of thunder exploding in the sky. Ye Guqin was knocked back more than 1,000 feet. Blood flowed down from the spot between his thumb and index finger where he held his sword. There were also some wounds on his body. The astral saber formed by the Bloodblade Saber Qi had still injured him. On the other hand, Zhang Sun Aojue's injuries were more severe. His black robes were torn, and blood flowed freely. Although he was not directly defeated or unable to fight, he clearly looked a little pathetic. The surrounding prodigies were stunned. They did not expect Zhang Sun Aojue to be suppressed to such an extent by Ye Guqin. Even his innate ability was useless. His ability cannot be underestimated. Zhao Shinkong's expression changed from relaxed to extremely serious. If it was said that he had underestimated Ye Guqin at the beginning, then now he was completely confident. But now, he had to be absolutely cautious. Big brother, although you're very strong, you shouldn't take such a risk, right? Zhao Xiaodi said worriedly. No. The more it's like this, the more I have to take action. Zhao Shinkong's eyes shone brightly. If it was just to avenge Xiao Wei Huang, then Zhao Shinkong could directly attack and kill Ye Guqin with Zhang Sun Aojue. But Zhao Shinkong did not choose to do so. He wanted to fight Ye Guqin fair and square. This sovereign's victory is only a matter of time. Dugu Qiuma no longer paid attention. He had already broken through the 900th step and was climbing up step by step. He wanted to sit on the golden cushion. As for Princess Luo Ho, she could only stop around the 900th step and could not advance any further. While the other prodigies were climbing, they were also paying attention to the battle between Yiguchen and Zhang Sun Aojue. On this side of the battle, Zhang Sun Aojue raised his hand to wipe away the flowing blood. His expression became very cold. Ha! I didn't expect to still have to use my trump card. Zhang Sun Aojue shook his head slightly. Originally, he had used the three-saber-style trump card to deal with the prodigies from the overlords. But now, he was forced to use it on Yiguchen. Just use your trump card. Otherwise, you won't have a chance, Yiguchen said calmly. He also wanted to see Zhang Sun Aojue's famous three-saber style. I don't use my three-saber style easily, but once I do, there will be blood. As Zhang Sun Aojue finished speaking, he crossed his two sabers and stabbed them into the ground. The third saber on his back was unsheathed. It rose into the air and landed on the hilts of the two sabers. Then, Zhang Sun Aojue pulled the hilts and used the crossed sabers as a bowstring. The sabers were extremely bent, and a fierce force gathered on the third saber. Sky Saber Moon Slashing, 1/Severing Soul. Zhang Sun Aojue released his grip, and the third saber pierced through the air. It tore through the air and pierced through Yiguchen's chest with blood saber chi. Yiguchen's reaction was also swift. He held his sword horizontally to block the attack. But when Zhang Sun Aojue shot out that saber, he quickly pulled out the two sabers from the ground and continued to use the second move. Dual Saber Attack, Destroy Heaven and Earth. Zhang Sun Aojue's true chi surged and poured into the two sabers. When Yiguchen blocked the first saber, Zhang Sun Aojue's two sabers had already slashed through the air. Boom! Yiguchen was in a hurry and could only take this move head-on. Ancient God Immovable King Armor. Yiguchen activated his Ancient God power, and a sturdy golden armor formed on the surface of his body. Zhang Sun Aojue's two sabers struck the Ancient God Immovable King Armor. With a boom, Yiguchen's chest shook, and a huge crack appeared on the Ancient God Immovable King Armor. But it wasn't over yet. Zhang Sun Aojue rose and crossed his two sabers as if he was controlling the third saber with both hands. That exquisite saber-controlling technique made the surrounding sky prides suck in a deep breath. They were all shocked beyond words. Impressive. Dao Wumeng, who was watching the battle from not far away, praised. Gu Zun was also watching intently. Because they were all saber cultivators, they could naturally see how exquisite Zhang Sun Aojue's technique of controlling sabers with sabers was. And this move would be Zhang Sun Aojue's ultimate move. Jinkue, this three-saber stream will send you to your death. Three sabers unsheathed, leave no trace behind. Zhang Sun Aojue controlled the sabers with his sabers. The three sabers struck out together, and their power shook the universe. Chapter 1277. The three-blade stream was Zhang Sun Aojue's strongest trump card. He thought that this move was enough to deal with those overlord-level prodigies, let alone those dynasty prodigies. Even those prodigies on the Dragon Phoenix list would not be able to ignore this move. However, the truth was just as Zhang Sun Aojue had expected. When the final move of the three-blade stream was unleashed, the three blades drew three powerful blade auras that lit up the sky. It was as if the three blades could cut through the sky. Even Gu Zun and Dao Wumeng, who were experts in the use of the blade, could not help but be amazed by the power of Zhang Sun Aojue's move. It was indeed worthy of the name, Three Blades Unsheathed. What a powerful move. Will Jinkue be able to take it? Time seemed to slow down at this moment. The eyes of all the spectating prodigies were bursting with light as they looked forward to the final clash. Zhao Shinkong, Zhao Xiaodi, Princess Luo Ho, and the others also wanted to know if Yiguchen could take Zhang Sun Aojue's final move. It could be said that even overlord-level forces would have to be extremely careful when facing this move. Seeing this, Yiguchen did not have any fear on his face. Instead, his battle intent was still burning. This kind of battle is more interesting. Yiguchen laughed heartily and also unleashed his ultimate move. 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique, Heaven's Extremity. Yiguchen raised his sword, and a Qian hexagram rune formed in the air. This was the Heaven's Rune, the Path of Heaven. It was the strongest move of the 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique, second only to the 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique. Yiguchen swung his sword horizontally and broke the Qian hexagram rune. In an instant, a vast and powerful wave of sword chi spread out. At this moment, Yiguchen seemed to be possessed by a celestial being. His sword contained the might of heaven. A celestial being, supreme. Boom! The bright and dazzling sword ray seemed to fall from the sky and collided with Zhangsun Aojue's strongest move. The surging waves shook the entire world. Both of them could be said to have used their strongest moves. Under the powerful collision, the shock waves shook one's heart. The intense saber aura and sword aura illuminated the entire sky. The other geniuses were all staring at the center of the battle. They wanted to know the results as soon as possible. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. Everyone held their breaths involuntarily. A figure retreated from the center of the explosion. It was Yiguchen. Everyone's gaze immediately turned to him. When they saw his condition, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. This was because a long saber had pierced through Yiguchen's shoulder from the front to the back like an arrow. Even the immovable ancient god king armor had already shattered. From this, one could see the might of Zhangsun Aojue's final attack. It could indeed be said to leave no one alive. Defeated? Jiankui lost. Seeing Yiguchen's condition, many of the Sky Prides couldn't help but exclaim. This was because Yiguchen hadn't suffered any serious injuries since entering the Sacred Emperor realm. Therefore, in the eyes of the crowd, this degree of injury was already considered a serious injury for Yiguchen. It was very rare. Defeated. It seems that Zhangsun Aojue is indeed qualified to join the War God Saber sect. Dao Wuman raised his eyebrows, his eyes filled with admiration. Gu Zun was slightly surprised because his intuition told him that Jiankui, with the ghost mask, was definitely not a simple person. As for Duguqiuma, he was still focused on reaching the peak. He didn't care about Yiguchen's situation. It wasn't that he didn't care, but that he and Yiguchen were mentally connected. He knew that Yiguchen didn't need him to worry. As for Princess Luoho, her red lips curled into a cold smile. She finally got to see Yiguchen's defeated and humiliated appearance. As for Zhao Shinkong, he shook his head slightly and muttered to himself, "It seems that I don't have to do anything. The result is already decided." Zhao Xiaodi murmured, "Is it really that simple?" Zhao Xiaodi knew how difficult and terrifying Yiguchen was to deal with. Right now, the Heaven's Prides all looked at Yiguchen in different ways. Some felt pity, some sighed, and some gloated and mocked. After all, Yiguchen had offended many people in the Sacred Emperor realm. Where is Zhangsun Aojue? Why hasn't he killed Jiankui yet? I don't know, many people realized that Zhangsun Aojue hadn't walked out of the smoke yet. At this moment, the corners of Yiguchen's mouth curled into a faint smile. He reached out and grabbed the hilt of the saber that pierced through his shoulder, pulling it out inch by inch. Blood dyed Yiguchen's robe red, but his face was as usual, without any expression. For Yiguchen, who had a perfect body and an ancient god body, an injury of this level would not affect him much. However, for Yiguchen, it had been a long time since he was injured like this. After all, it had been a long time since anyone could injure him to this extent. The last move of Zhangsun Aojue's three-saber style was indeed amazing. However, it was just a little amazing. A breeze blew, and the smoke and dust dispersed. When Zhangsun Aojue's figure appeared in front of everyone's eyes, everyone's breathing seemed to stop at the same time. Zhangsun Aojue knelt on the ground with one knee and stabbed his saber into the ground to support his weakened body. There was a huge bloody hole in his chest, and the squirming organs inside could be seen clearly. His heart and other parts had been pierced through. Hiss! All the heavens' prides trembled and felt a chill. Indeed, Yi Gu Chen had suffered a serious injury. However, Zhang Sun Aojue was definitely going to die. Jiankui, Zhang Sun Aojue's hand that was holding the saber was trembling, and blood was flowing out of his mouth. He could not even speak a complete sentence. However, Yi Guqin could see anger, unwillingness, regret, and other emotions in his eyes. You should be proud to be able to injure me to this extent, Yi Guqin said calmly. He did not humiliate or mock him. He just stated a fact calmly. Puchi. When Zhang Sun Aojue heard that, he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The blood gathered into a pool of blood. Zhang Sun Aojue, the number 1 on the saber leaderboard of the Tyrant Saber Dynasty, had died. Looking at Zhang Sun Aojue lying in a pool of blood, all the heavens' prides were speechless. Who would have thought that the number 1 on the saber leaderboard, who had a bright future and was destined to join the Battle God Saber sect, would end up like this? There were also some people who looked at Yi Gu Chen with extreme fear in their eyes. It seemed that until now, no one who went against Jiankui had a good ending. Jiankui is not to be trifled with, many heavens' pride swore in their hearts. They definitely could not trifle with Jiankui. Zhang Sun Aojue was a bloody example. Princess Luo Ho and the others had cold expressions. Yi Guqin's gaze suddenly turned to Zhao Shinkong, who was not far away. If you want to, you can do it now. Hearing Yi Guqin's words, the other heavens' prides turned to Zhao Shinkong. Could it be that Zhao Shinkong was also going to attack Yi Guqin? Chapter 1278. Everyone thought in their hearts and felt that this was very likely. The War God Dynasty and the Sword Dynasty had been in conflict for a long time. After all, no one wanted to be number 2 forever. The War God Dynasty naturally wanted to replace the Sword Dynasty. Under such circumstances, the prodigies of the 2 dynasties would naturally fight in the Sacred Emperor world. However, in the previous battle, Zhao Weihuang, who was number 2 on the War God list, had already died at the hands of Yi Guqin. The grudge between them was even deeper. As number 1 on the War God list, Zhao Shinkong obviously wouldn't let this go. And the truth was just as those prodigies had expected. Zhao Shinkong couldn't avoid the battle. Many people's eyes were filled with interest. Zhang Sun Aojue had died at the hands of Yi Guqin. Who was stronger between Zhao Shinkong and Yi Guqin? As the number 1 prodigy of the War God Dynasty, Zhao Shinkong had the title of Little War God. This title couldn't be given casually. It meant that Zhao Shinkong had an overlord status among the prodigies of the War God Dynasty. If the 2 of them fought, the scene would definitely shock everyone. If I were Zhao Shinkong, I would definitely attack now. Yeah, Jiankui just fought with Zhang Sun Aojue and isn't in peak condition. Plus, he's injured. This is the best time to attack. Yeah, if we wait until Jiankui recovers and gains something from Dao Comprehension Mountain, it will be much more difficult for Zhao Shinkong to suppress him then. Some prodigies' eyes flashed. They all thought that Zhao Shinkong might attack now. Taking advantage of someone's precarious situation might sound bad. But there was no such thing as fairness in this world. The most important thing was to have the last laugh. Yi Guqin looked at Zhao Shinkong and said, I personally killed Zhao Weihuang and the other prodigies of the War God list. You will definitely attack. If you want to fight, come now. I won't take a step back. Although Yi Guqin was injured at the moment, his aura was still strong and breathtaking. Zhao Shinkong suddenly laughed and said to Yi Guqin, Jiankui, in your eyes, is my War God Dynasty a villain who takes advantage of others? Yi Guqin pondered for a moment before saying, I don't know about you, but Zhao Weihuang is more or less like that. His words left Zhao Shinkong speechless. After all, he was very clear about Zhao Weihuang's character. He was indeed a person who would do anything to achieve his goals. However, Zhao Shinkong was different. He was a minor war god of the war god empire. Zhao Shinkong despised such actions of taking advantage of others. Under such circumstances, if he were to sell it, so what if he defeated Ye Guqin? In the future, no one would say that he was better than Ye Guqin. They would only say that he was taking advantage of Ye Guqin's precarious position. Therefore, Zhao Shinkong disdained to do such a thing. If you think of me as that kind of person, then you think too highly of me, Zhao Shinkong. I will indeed fight you and suppress you, but not now. I will wait until after Dao Comprehension Mountain. Zhao Shinkong said. As he spoke, Ye Guqin looked at him in surprise. He hadn't expected Zhao Shinkong to have some character. He had thought that Zhao Shinkong and Zhao Weihuang were jackals of the same tribe. In that case, I underestimated you. Since you won't fight now, then let's fight after Dao Comprehension. Ye Guqin nodded slightly. Zhao Shinkong's personality made him admire him a little. Of course, it was only a little. In a real battle, Ye Guqin would not hold back at all. Big brother. Zhao Xiaodi looked worried. She had also seen the battle just now. Even someone as strong as Zhangsun Aojue had fallen to Ye Guqin's sword. Even though Zhao Shinkong was strong, the situation was uncertain in a real fight. There's no need to say more. I've made up my mind, Zhao Shinkong said. He did not choose to attack Ye Guqin now. Instead, he planned to fight after Dao Comprehension. Seeing this, Ye Guqin also began to climb to the peak. Although he had suffered serious injuries, the sealed ancient god's heart in his body was still releasing drops of ancient god's blood to nourish his body. The wound on his shoulder healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. This way, after Dao Comprehension, Ye Guqin's injuries would not be completely healed, but they would not affect him too much. Many people were speechless when they saw Ye Guqin's aura. That Jinkue's physical strength is too shocking. Yeah, even some ascetic cultivators who specialize in physical strength might not be as strong as his, right? Ye Guqin did not care about the opinions of the outside world. At this moment, he was facing the pressure and climbing up step by step. Zhao Shinkong seemed to be competing with him, also climbing to the peak. 949 floors, 950 floors. When Ye Guqin stepped onto the 950th step, even with his physical strength, he was panting. He was greatly suppressed. If this continues, I might not be able to climb to the peak and sit on that golden mat. Ye Guqin's expression froze. Although his comprehension ability could be considered monstrous, it should be known that this was a fortuitous encounter left behind by the sage emperor. How could it be so easy to obtain the opportunity left behind by such an expert? What should I do? Ye Guqin asked himself. At this moment, specks of golden runes suddenly appeared in his body. These runes were like laws, exuding a mysterious feeling. This is... Ye Guqin was slightly taken aback, then suddenly reacted. These rune laws were the reward he had received after passing Mount Saint Crossing, the Saint Dao Law Empowerment. Of course, with Ye Guqin's current cultivation level, he was still unable to use this power. But with the help of the pressure here, the Saint Dao Law automatically appeared in his body. With the help of the power of the Saint Path Law, Ye Guqin felt that his comprehension of the laws was skyrocketing. As for that oppressive might, it had also weakened. I didn't expect that the Saint Dao Law would come in handy at this moment. Ye Guqin was secretly delighted, but he did not show it on the surface. However, his footsteps quietly quickened. Oh! Zhao Shinkong, who was following closely behind Ye Guqin, suddenly sensed that Ye Guqin's speed was increasing. How is this possible? How did he do it? Zhao Shinkong was secretly shocked. After reaching the 950th step, he could not hold on any longer. Ye Guqin's speed became faster and faster. He was not the only one. Many other geniuses also noticed, and their eyes widened as if they had seen a ghost. At this speed, Ye Guqin finally stepped onto the peak. The moment he stepped onto the peak, the entire Enlightenment Mountain trembled. A mass of golden light emerged and lifted Yi Guchen's body onto the cattail hassock suspended in midair. Yi Guchen sat cross-legged on the futon, his mind clear. At this moment, he felt as if the entire world had been dissected and presented before his eyes without reservation. This is the world in the eyes of the immortal Saint Emperor. Yi Guchen looked at the world in front of him, the countless intertwined laws, and was shocked. This futon actually allowed him to temporarily possess the vision of a Saint Emperor. Chapter 1279. Immortal Saint Emperors were the strongest existences that stood at the peak of the 9 regions. The world in their eyes was completely different from the world in the eyes of ordinary people. It could be said that only those who had reached the immortal Saint Emperor realm could have such a vision. But now, with the power of the golden praying mat, Yi Guchen also had such a vision for a short period of time. At this moment, in Yi Guchen's eyes, the entire world was filled with countless rules. Everything in the world operated according to its own rules. Yi Guchen's current state of mind was like a dusty gem that had been polished. No wonder saints can easily tear through the void and break through space. It's because they have mastered the rules of space. And the reason why immortal saint emperors can create small worlds in their bodies is because their understanding of the laws is deep enough to create small worlds. Yi Guchen's mood suddenly became clear. Don't underestimate such vision. Yi Guchen was able to experience the vision of immortal saint emperors at the divine dwelling stage. Such an opportunity was extremely precious. There was a good saying that vision determined the height. If Yi Guchen's vision was limited to a certain area, then his growth would be much slower, and it would be very difficult for him. But now, Yi Guchen's vision had been broadened, and he instantly understood what path he should take in the future. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing now was that Yi Guchen's mind was operating too fast. He seemed to have a feeling that he could easily comprehend any martial arts cultivation method. This is a rare opportunity, I have to seize it. Yi Guchen's eyes were filled with excitement as he began to comprehend the secret techniques. At this moment, the faces of the other heaven prides on Tao Comprehension Mountain froze, and they felt extremely incredulous. It should be said that only the 1 Emperor and 4 Emperors level heaven prides could set foot on the peak of Tao Comprehension Mountain. And now that Yi Guchen could set foot on the peak, didn't that mean that he was almost comparable to the 1 Emperor and 4 Emperors? This caused many people to inwardly suck in a breath of air and sigh endlessly. This time, a fierce character had appeared among the Empire's heaven prides. On Tao Comprehension Mountain, Zhao Shinkong's expression was unprecedentedly grave as he looked at Yi Guchen, who was sitting cross-legged on the golden praying mat. Even Zhao Shinkong had never thought that Yi Guchen would be able to reach this step. If he had known earlier, Zhao Shinkong might have hesitated for a moment. But things had already been decided, and he couldn't change it. A barrier appeared around Yi Guchen's golden praying mat. Unless Yi Guchen's own initiative, no one would be able to disturb Yi Guchen. Zhao Xiaodi said worriedly, "Big brother, you've seen Dugu Wubai's ability. Once he finishes comprehending it, his strength will increase again." At that time, originally, Zhao Xiaodi was very clear about her elder brother's strength. Zhao Shinkong had never worried was worried. But now, Zhao Xiaodi was really nervous. She didn't want this battle to happen. Zhao Shinkong stubbornly shook his head, fighting spirit still rising in his eyes. "I also have to make the best use of my time to comprehend. I might not lose." Zhao Shinkong sat cross-legged on the spot and began to comprehend. Some of the top heaven prides had begun to charge towards the peak of Tao Comprehension Mountain. Gu Zun had also crossed the 950th level. So had Dao Wumeng. The witch was competing with Yi Tsangyue, charging towards the peak. Dugu was the only one left on Qiu Mo's side. He was taking one step at a time. Dugu Qiu Mo's talent was unquestionable. Having inherited the talent of the Dark World's soul-devouring royal family, his comprehension ability wasn't any weaker than Yi Guchen's. "Since my original body has already reached the peak, I can't be a burden." Mo's white hair fluttered in the wind, a cold glint in his eyes. Although he was only Yiguchen's clone, his pride wasn't any weaker than Yiguchen's. Boom! A terrifying demonic aura erupted from Mo's body. Vaguely, there seemed to be a power from another world radiating from his body. It was the bloodline talent of the Dark World's soul-devouring royal family. Thump! 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 Mo took dozens of steps forward, brazenly ascending to the peak. In an instant, a ball of golden light appeared again, lifting Mo up and landing him on the golden praying mat. Mo also reached the peak. This scene once again caused an uproar in the surroundings. In the past, it was extremely rare for a heaven's pride to reach the peak. But now, two had appeared at the same time. Amazing. Could it be that Mo also has talent comparable to the one emperor and four sovereigns? Probably not by much. After all, he's someone who can suppress a heaven's pride on the Dragon Phoenix list. Many people were surprised that Yiguchen had reached the peak, but many accepted that Mo had reached the peak. This was because Mo's attitude had always been extremely domineering, and he'd even suppressed a heaven's pride from an overlord-level force as a servant. In comparison, Yiguchen's performance was also extremely stunning, but it was less domineering. This is incredible. Both of them are rising stars. If they can survive this heaven's favorite battleground, their futures will be bright. Just as everyone was exclaiming in admiration, another golden light flashed on another enlightenment mountain. Another person reached the peak. The group was stunned. Some people thought they were seeing things. On that Tao Enlightenment Mountain, a sloppy youth sat cross-legged on a golden praying mat. It was Gu Zun. That's Gu Zun. He also reached the peak. Some people were shocked. Gu Zun's ascension was also beyond many people's expectations. Even Dao Wumeng had only reached the 990th step. Although he was only a hair's breadth away from the peak, it was still very difficult. Wichuan, and Yue were also heaven's prides from overlord factions, but Dao Wumeng had only reached the 990th step, only a hair's breadth away from the peak. How did Gu Zun reach the peak? Although he's not weak, he's not that strong, right? Some people were puzzled. However, they didn't know Gu Zun's past. They didn't know what Gu Zun had experienced. Only Yiguchen knew, so he wasn't surprised that Gu Zun could reach the peak. Gu Zun's temperament was enough to support him. Currently, only Yiguchen, Mo, and Gu Zun had reached the peak. Dao Wumeng, Wichuan, Yue, Zhao Shinkong, Zhao Xiaodi, and Princess Luo Ho were next. The rest were the other heaven's prides. The entire 5 fingers of Enlightenment Mountain also fell into a rare temporary silence. Everyone was trying their best to comprehend the Tao, to make themselves stronger. At the same time, another shocking piece of news spread throughout the inner circle. The greatest place of opportunity in the sacred emperor world, the Saint's Inheritance Ground, had opened. The Saint's Inheritance Ground was the ultimate opportunity in the sacred emperor world. One could obtain the Saint's inheritance there. The lucky ones could even obtain the Saint King's inheritance. It was even to the extent that the illusory sacred emperor's inheritance of legend might be amongst them. Chapter 1280. It could be said that many geniuses were fighting to enter the Holy Imperial Universe. The main reason was to enter the land of inheritance of the Holy Land. It was said that the sacred land of inheritance was where the immortal Saint Emperor had moved the treasures of the saints and Saint Kings into the small world within his body. It could be said that even if it was just an ordinary prodigy, as long as he could obtain the legacy of a saint in the Saint Realm's inheritance land, he would be reborn and soar to the sky in one go. In the past, when the sacred imperial world opened, there were many lucky geniuses who soared to the sky and gained the favor of the overlords. It was obvious how attractive the sacred land of inheritance was to all the geniuses in the sacred imperial world. It could even be said that the sacred land of inheritance was more precious than the 5 fingers of Enlightenment Mountain. There were also some geniuses from the overlords who dreamed of obtaining the legacy of the immortal Saint Emperor. It was just that no one had succeeded in so many years. But even without the sacred emperor's legacy, the saint and saint king's legacies were enough to tempt people. At this moment, except for some geniuses who were cultivating in other places of opportunity, all the remaining geniuses would gather at the sacred land of inheritance. Jian Jinghong was one of them. He walked in the air with sword aura around him, and the heavenly sword scar between his eyebrows shone brightly. That was the source of his special ability, the embryonic form of the heavenly sword will given to him by the heavens. With the embryonic form of the heavenly sword will, Jian Jinghong had evolved the heavenly sword principle. His strength was not among the top in the sacred imperial world, but he was definitely in the top tier. Why is the embryonic form of the heavenly sword principle between my eyebrows vibrating? Is there an inheritance in the sacred land of inheritance that matches my element? Jian Jinghong muttered to himself. There were many opportunities in the sacred land of inheritance, but not everyone could obtain them. Opportunities were for those who were fated to obtain them. Without that fate, it was difficult to obtain the legacy. Therefore, among the geniuses who entered the sacred land of inheritance in the past, 8 or 9 out of 10 were in vain. To obtain the sacred land of inheritance, one had to have strength, luck, and fate. It was obvious how difficult it was to obtain the sacred land of inheritance. I have to go take a look. Jian Jinghong did not say a word and flew toward the sage domain's inheritance. The saint's heritage site was located in the center of the holy imperial world. It was a plain. Countless ancient ruins were scattered all over the plains. All sorts of broken walls and ruined buildings were scattered across the plains, and it was suffused with an ancient feeling. At this moment, many geniuses were entering this ancient site, wanting to obtain the inheritance. Jian Jinghong's figure flashed. The closer he got to the ancient site, the more the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword will between his eyebrows flickered. Finally, Jian Jinghong stopped in his tracks. Because when he arrived here, his heart suddenly throbbed, as if there was a voice calling out to him in his mind. Jian Jinghong looked over and was shocked to see a dilapidated ancient site in front of him. His figure flashed, turning into a beam of light as he flew away. Not long after, the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword intent on his forehead resonated with a certain mechanism in the ancient ruins. Then, the entire ruins exploded as a beam of divine light pierced through the sky. Within the divine light, an illusory figure vaguely appeared. It was a stalwart man with his hands behind his back. His entire person was like a sword that stood between heaven and earth. A powerful aura of a heavenly tribulation saint shook the universe in all directions. This is a saint's opportunity. Jian Jinghong himself could not believe that such a precious saint's inheritance had appeared so easily. Just as Jian Jinghong was feeling puzzled, he suddenly noticed that the saint's illusory figure also had a sword mark between his eyebrows. The aura he exuded also carried a terrifying aura. Could it be that this senior was also born with the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword intent? Jian Jinghong suddenly realized. No wonder he found the saint's inheritance so easily. It turned out that he had a trace of fate with this saint. Jian Jinghong did not hesitate any longer and directly stepped into the divine light to sit cross-legged. Immediately, Jian Jinghong felt that all kinds of techniques and inheritances were displayed in his mind. This kind of opportunity was absolutely rare. This is great. This trip to the sacred emperor realm was worth it. Jian Jinghong's eyes were filled with excitement. The commotion here naturally attracted a group of geniuses. Could that be the saint's inheritance? Many geniuses were stunned. The one who obtained the inheritance is Jian Jinghong from the Sword Dynasty. It's him. Forget it, we can't afford to offend him. Many sky prides shook their heads. They weren't sky prides from overlord forces. Facing a sky pride like Jian Jinghong, they were still a little fearful. Moreover, Yi Guqin was in the sacred emperor realm. Even if these geniuses were bold enough to provoke him, they were afraid that Yi Guqian and the other geniuses from the Sword Dynasty would take revenge on them. Therefore, they could only watch on helplessly. Half a day later, more and more geniuses gathered here. However, when they saw that it was Jian Jinghong, they did not dare to act rashly. It seems that this saint's inheritance is fated to be with Jian Jinghong. Yeah, if we fight for it, Jian Jinghong will probably fight us to the death. After weighing the pros and cons, many geniuses decided to watch from the sidelines. At this moment, there was a sudden surge of aura in the distance and a powerful aura came crashing down. What a powerful aura, what a sharp sword intent. Who is it? Everyone looked over in unison. They saw a young man in white walking over in the air with his hands behind his back. He was as handsome as jade and had an upright aura. He was tall and handsome, like a dragon steed and a phoenix chick. He exuded an extraordinary aura of a genius. With every step he took, there seemed to be sword chi exploding in the void. The fluctuations were so powerful that it made people's eyelids twitch. It's Chu Xuanjun from the Heavenly God Sword sect with the Sword King body. Young Master Xuanjun is here. When they saw who it was, all the geniuses gasped. Although not all the top geniuses from the Nantian region had gathered in the Sacred Emperor realm, there were still many outstanding geniuses who had entered. Chu Xuanjun was one of them. It could even be said that he was one of the most dazzling geniuses in the Sacred Emperor realm. It's Chu Xuanjun. This is interesting. He has hidden his strength very well. That's right. The Heavenly God Sword sect has a Haotian dragon who shines brightly and overshadows Chu Xuanjun. However, this doesn't mean that Chu Xuanjun is weak. On the contrary, his strength is almost on par with the four emperors. It is even rumored that he already has the strength to stand shoulder to shoulder with the four emperors. Some of the geniuses who knew a little about Chu Xuanjun looked at him with endless fear. The man in white who was covered by Di Haotian's brilliance was definitely not Di Haotian's follower. On the contrary, Di Haotian had once said something. Even if the Heavenly God Sword sect did not have him, Chu Xuanjun alone was enough to dominate all the geniuses. This showed how well Chu Xuanjun had hidden his strength. At this moment, Chu Xuanjun arrived and looked at Jian Jinghong who was shrouded in the divine light. An indifferent voice came out of his mouth. The geniuses of the dynasty are not worthy of the saint's inheritance. Chapter 1281. As soon as Chu Xuanjun finished speaking, the entire place fell into dead silence. Most of the onlooking geniuses were from dynasties. When they heard Chu Xuanjun's words, their expressions changed and there was a hint of anger in their eyes. Chu Xuanjun's words were like a sharp blade that stabbed into their hearts. Indeed, these geniuses from dynasties were inferior when facing the geniuses from the overlord forces. They even felt a little humble. This was because of their different backgrounds. The difference between being from an overlord force and being from a dynasty was like heaven and earth. Unless it was a top dynasty like the Sword Dynasty or the War God Dynasty, they could barely be considered a quasi-overlord force. However, in terms of foundation, they were still inferior to the overlord forces. Therefore, in the sacred imperial realm, geniuses from dynasties would usually take a detour when encountering the geniuses from the overlord forces. Not everyone was like Yi Guqian or Dugu Qiuma who had the courage to kill the geniuses from the overlord forces. At this moment, Chu Xuanjun's eyes were filled with coldness as he looked at Jian Jinghong who was shrouded in the divine light. Without any hesitation, he directly raised his hand. The violent genuine qi along with the sword qi rushed toward Jian Jinghong who was in the midst of enlightenment. Jian Jinghong's reaction was also very sharp. He immediately opened his eyes and a translucent sword qi slashed out and collided with Chu Xuanjun's move. Chu Xuanjun, what are you doing? Jian Jinghong frowned. Previously, he was immersed in enlightenment and did not hear Chu Xuanjun's words. However, no matter who it was, they would be unhappy to be disturbed in their Tao enlightenment. The sage's opportunity is not something that geniuses from dynasties like you are qualified to obtain. If you know what's good for you, scram. Chu Xuanzhen did not say much and his tone was indifferent. The word, scram, was like driving a beggar away. You. Jian Jinghong raised his eyebrows. No matter what, he was the sword son of the Sword Dynasty and his strength was not much weaker than the geniuses from the overlord forces. However, Chu Xuanzhen's attitude was still as if he was scolding an ant. Chu Xuanzhen, although you are one of the top 10 young masters and the Sword King body of the Heavenly God Sword Sect, I am not a pushover, Jian Jinghong said coldly. Are all the sword sons of the Sword Dynasty as noisy as you? Chu Xuanzhen said indifferently with a condescending attitude. Boom. Jian Jinghong did not say another word and directly attacked. At the same time, he unleashed his heavenly sword Dao, and a powerful aura burst out. Is this Jian Jinghong's true strength? So strong. Yeah, it's so suffocating. His strength is definitely top-notch. Many of the surrounding sky prides were shocked, but at the same time, they were looking forward to it. After all, most of them were dynasty prodigies. In their hearts, they were still biased towards Jian Jinghong and hoped that he could perform amazingly. Only Chu Xuanzhen had not fought many times, so no one knew how strong he was. An ant trying to shake a tree. You're overestimating yourself. As Chu Xuanzhen took a step forward, the aura of the seventh layer of the divine dwelling realm gushed out like an ancient volcano. Sun and moon together. Chu Xuanzhen moved his palms. Powerful and cold sword chi swirled around the swords in his hands as if it could shatter everything around it. He pushed forward, his aura surging. Every move he made was a powerful move that could easily kill ordinary divine dwelling stage heaven prides. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Jian Jinghong was naturally not a pushover. His sword struck out gracefully, setting off wild waves. The void seemed to be filled with violent sword chi, and the fluctuations were so powerful that it was terrifying. It could be said that the aura and strength of these two people had exceeded everyone's expectations, making them tremble in fear. Boom! 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 Countless sword chi exploded in the sky. It had to be said that Chu Xuanzhen and Jian Jinghong were both geniuses of the sword. Chu Xuanzhen had the rare Sword King body. Jian Jinghong had the embryonic form of the heavenly sword Dao, and it had already transformed into the creation-level heavenly sword Dao. The strength of these two people was enough to dominate a region. However, anyone with discerning eyes could vaguely see. Jian Jinghong was indeed using his full strength. On the other hand, Chu Xuanzhen looked like he was at ease and seemed to be hiding something. Chu Xuanzhen, don't look down on others. Haven't you heard of the saying that those who are good at swimming will drown? Jian Jinghong's eyes were very cold. The one who was most likely to drown was the one who was best at swimming. If Chu Xuanzhen looked down on others like that, he would only harm himself in the end. Don't try to figure out what I, Chu Xuanzhen, am capable of with your short-sightedness. As Chu Xuanzhen's voice fell, he raised one of his hands, and a ray of blood light pierced through the air. In the end, it turned into a blood-colored long sword and fell into his hand. The sound of the blood cicada, endless killing calamity, lifeless sword domain. Chu Xuanzhen held the blood cicada sword in his hand and swung it out horizontally. A dark, destructive, and deadly sword essence spread out. It was the lifeless sword Dao. The lifeless sword Dao, like the Azura sword Dao, was an extreme killing sword Dao, and its attack power was strong. Lifeless sword Dao. Jian Jinghong's eyes narrowed. It was not too unexpected. As a Sword King body, it would be surprising if he did not even comprehend the sword Dao. Jian Jinghong did not stay idle. He also used his heavenly sword Dao. This was a creation-level sword Dao. As soon as it was used, its power was so strong that it seemed to cover the sky. The heavenly sword Dao of the creation realm, huh? That should be your greatest trump card. Seeing this scene, Chu Xuanzhen raised his eyebrows slightly. He had heard about it a long time ago, so he was not too surprised. However, in the next moment, Chu Xuanzhen once again used a peerless sword Dao. As soon as this sword Dao was used, a wild, desolate, and vast sword Dao aura surged out. It was as if everything around had returned to the prehistoric era. A peerless primitive sword Dao. Chu Xuanzhen used 2 peerless sword Daos in a row, which was shocking. Next, the 2 peerless sword Daos and the creation sword Dao collided with each other, causing fluctuations to surge. Countless sword Qi were born and destroyed in the sky, and the sound of explosions echoed in all directions. If this continues, I don't know how long they will fight. Some of the spectating sky prides hid far away, afraid that they would be affected. But now it seems that Jian Jinghong is still very strong. He can compete with Chu Xuanzhen. That's right. Chu Xuanzhen doesn't seem to be as powerful as the rumors say. Some sky prides looked at Chu Xuanzhen suspiciously. He was indeed famous, but now it seemed that he was just so. Although it was rare to have 2 peerless sword Daos, Chu Xuanzhen was not the only one who had them. Therefore, Chu Xuanzhen's current performance did not match his reputation and status. Not only them, but even Jian Jinghong also felt that something was wrong. Chu Xuanzhen did not use his full strength. Chu Xuanzhen, I've told you not to look down on others. Or do you think that you can take me down with such strength? Jian Jinghong said in a deep voice. Chu Xuanzhen shook his head faintly and said, I wanted to play with you for a while, but now it seems that there's no need for that. Let's end this. After Chu Xuanzhen said that, he raised his hands at the same time, and a burst of genuine qi spread out. Then, under the horrified gazes of the crowd, the power of the lifeless sword Dao gradually merged and superimposed with the primitive sword Dao. How is this possible? Everyone cried out in horror, and their scalps went numb. How could Chu Xuanzhen achieve the fusion and superimposition of sword principles? Chapter 1283. The leader of the 3 was a handsome young man in a robe and a crown. His eyes seemed to contain the brilliance of the stars and he looked calm and profound. Who else could it be but Gu Xiaoyang? Beside him were 2 young men in silver. They were Jiang Qingsong and Jiang Shiyu. Its young master Xingyun from the Starry Sword Pavilion and the remaining 2 young Star Lords. Why are they here? Don't tell me they're also here to snatch the sage's opportunity. If that was the case, the situation would be much more interesting. Oh, you're here too. Chu Xuanzhen's expression did not change much when he saw Gu Xiaoyang. Although they were both young masters, Gu Xiaoyang was a newly promoted young master. Chu Xuanzhen, on the other hand, was a real veteran young master. In terms of background, the Celestial Sword sect was not inferior to the Starry Sword Pavilion. Therefore, Chu Xuanzhen was calm about Gu Xiaoyang's arrival. He was not afraid that Gu Xiaoyang would attack him. However, Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and the others did not think so. Gu Xiaoyang. He's here with ill intentions. Jian Jinghong looked serious. Just by looking at Jiang Qingsong and Jiang Shiyu's venomous eyes, one could see their attitude towards the Sword Dynasty. The news that Yi Guqin killed Jiang Wangcheng and Jiang Yuanlong had already spread throughout the Holy Imperial world. Under such circumstances, Gu Xiaoyang and the others' arrival was definitely not a good thing. Are you here to fight for the saint's inheritance as well? Chu Xuanzhen asked calmly. He, Brother Chu, you must be joking. Although the saint's inheritance is good, it's not the only place in the saint's inheritance land. We're here to help Brother Chu solve these problems. Gu Xiaoyang smiled faintly. Jian Jinghong and the others' hearts sank as soon as they heard that. Oh, I see. Chu Xuanzhen said calmly. In fact, he was confident that he could deal with any situation. However, since Gu Xiaoyang and the others were willing to help, Chu Xuanzhen could not refuse. Jiang Qingsang's eyes carried a bone-chilling coldness as he looked at Jian Jinghong and the others and said, although every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor, the death of my two brothers will still be blamed on your sword dynasty. If you want to fight, then fight. What's with all the nonsense? Jian Jinghong said coldly. Since they had already reached this point, there was no point in saying anything more. A great battle immediately broke out. On one side were Chu Xuanzhen, Gu Xiaoyang, Jiang Qingsang, and Jiang Shiyu. On one side were Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and Kong Kong. All the Sky Prides present were well aware that there would be no suspense in the outcome of such a battle. Even so, the performance of Jian Jinghong and the other two had exceeded everyone's expectations. In addition, there were also Xuanlian and Kong Kong. Their methods also attracted the attention of all the geniuses. Great thunderclap sword art. Xuanlian brazenly brandished his sword. His voice was as loud as thunder, as if he was chanting Buddhist scriptures. Kong Kong also used his unique skill. Kasayapa sword seal. Kong Kong's petite body surged with endless golden light. He was like a young Buddha. At this moment, he actually had a solemn look. Countless golden swastikas floated around his body, making him look mysterious. Oh. Interesting. It doesn't look like a martial art from the Nantian region. Instead, it looks like a Buddhist unique skill from the Shihuang region. Chu Xuanzhen's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. He was quite interested. As a Sky Pride from an Overlord-level force, his vision was naturally not comparable to ordinary Sky Prides. At a glance, he could tell that Xuanlian and the others might not be local Sky Prides from the Nantian region. However, this did not mean anything. Martial artists from other regions were often seen in the Nantian region. It was not rare. Xuanlian and Kong Kong's methods surprised Gu Xiaoyang and the others. It was not that easy for them to suppress Xuanlian and the others. TSK. I thought that Jian Jinghong and the others would not be able to hold on for more than 15 minutes when 4 Overlord-level Sky Prides attacked at the same time. I didn't expect them to hold on for so long. Yeah, this is a little unfair. If Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian and the others could be trained by the Overlord-level forces, they might not be weaker than Chu Xuanzhen and Gu Xiaoyang. Many onlookers sighed and felt that it was a pity. However, Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and Kong Kong's performance was amazing. Their enemies were even more terrifying. Young Master Xuanzhen, Chu Xuanzhen, and Young Master Xingyun, Gu Xiaoyang. 2 of the 10 young masters were enemies. If it were any other Sky Prides, they would definitely be defeated. In the end, after half an hour, Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and Kong Kong were still a little weaker and were defeated. Pfft! The 3 of them were blasted back. They coughed out blood and their auras weakened. Especially Jian Jinghong. He was already injured. Now that he was seriously injured, he would have fainted if it were not for his strong will. You are just like ants. You wasted so much of my time. Chu Xuanzhen's eyes were cold and he was about to kill them. However, Gu Xiaoyang stopped him and said, Young Master Xuanzhen, please wait. Let them live for now. Why? Chu Xuanzhen's eyes flashed. Gu Xiaoyang was definitely not a kind person. Nothing. I just want to kill all 13 sword princes of the sword dynasty, especially Jinkui, Gu Xiaoyang said. Gu Xiaoyang did not know that Jinkui's real identity was Yiguchen. Therefore, he did not have much of a grudge against Jinkui. However, this was the request of Jiang Qingsang and Jiang Shiyu. They wanted to suppress all 13 sword princes and then kill the other 12 sword princes one by one in front of Yiguchen. Only in this way could they vent the resentment and anger in their hearts. Ha! Do as you wish, Chu Xuanzhen said calmly. To be honest, Chu Xuanzhen did not have a good impression of Yiguchen. Previously, at the trade fair in the sacred city of Fortune, Chu Xuanzhen wanted to exchange for Su Qiqing. However, Yi Guchen intercepted him and even embarrassed him a little. Since Gu Xiaoyang and the others wanted to kill Yi Guchen, Chu Xuanzhen naturally would not stop them. Don't even think about it. Jian Jinghong and the others' eyes were sharp. Humph, there is only one end for you 13 sword princes. You will all be killed. Gu Xiaoyang and the others attacked and suppressed Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and Kong Kong. They used special methods to seal their spiritual dwellings and meridians so that they could not break free. Next, release the news that Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and the others are suppressed by us and can be killed at any time. If you want them to live, ask Jinkui to come and save them, Gu Xiaoyang said. He had already planned how to deal with the 13 sword princes. In addition, Gu Xiaoyang faced the surrounding sky prides and said again, also, if any of you can capture the other sword princes, Gu Xiaoyang, can guarantee with my dignity that I will recruit you into the Starry Sword Pavilion. Gu Xiaoyang's words were like a huge rock that fell into the sea and caused an uproar again. As long as they captured a sword prince, they would definitely be able to join the Starry Sword Pavilion. This condition was not bad and was very attractive. At least for those sky prides who had no hope of being chosen by an overlord force, this might be their only chance to qualify to join an overlord force. Looking at those sky prides whose eyes were faintly glowing with red light, Gu Xiaoyang's lips curled into a relaxed smile. Jinkui, what do you have to fight me? Gu Xiaoyang's scheming and shrewdness were not inferior to his strength. Otherwise, Gu Xiaoyang would not have been able to snatch Yi Guchen's innate sword embryo.